30 years now. We're here to do a proposal for some upgrades and improvements on our dog park. But first I always have to introduce the dogs. Those are two Labradors. The black one in the front is trained to become a therapy dog and will be working in Hardyview Lodge. The one in the back, we're still working on her to help do that with us. And these are two 100-year-old Labradors who, any of you who have known dogs know they have lots of energy. Next slide. Brief history, we began fundraising in about 2008, 2009, and the park opened in 2010 on a piece of land given by the city. It's actually on 18th Street behind the cemetery overlooking the slough in Johnson Flats, and it's a lovely little area. We did another presentation in 2012 and requested some of the things we're requesting now, but unfortunately I lost momentum on that one. But at that time they installed water from the city sewer lines, which was lovely, and they do an excellent job of maintaining the property, making sure garbage is empty and all of that. The dog park continues to be used regularly by a wide variety of people. We have a Facebook page with over 100 members of it. And then we have the entire group, which is probably double the size of that, who don't have computers, who don't use Facebook. Okay? So we have a lot of use. Benefits of a dog park, well, you know, people I could spend 10 minutes talking about the importance of socialization. Well, socialized dogs make better canine citizens. They don't bark at things because they have the confidence not to. A tired dog is a happy dog. A tired dog makes happy neighbors because they're not barking. Promotes responsible pet ownership. We are the people that walk around town with poop bags in our pocket and hand them to people whose dogs are pooping. Okay? And it takes once to do that to have a convert. Social community for people as well. One of my favorite stories is last year, the group had a gathering for an older woman who was having her 76th birthday and a birthday cake for her as well. These people all met through their dogs. It allows people with limited mobility to exercise dogs. You'd be surprised the number of 70-year-olds who get German Shepherds. Okay, and it provides a place for tourists to stop and potty their dogs. Okay. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Nervous, sorry. Okay, our proposal is 5-part. Some of them are very, very, very small. Others will require a little more discussion. We would like an expansion of the current area, including the division of the park into 2 sections. The next slide will give a very sketchy picture of it, what we're looking at. We'd like to add a gazebo-type shelter. It's hot there in the summer. We need shade. The dogs need shade. It's cold there in the winter. We need to huddle and do something. The parking area is slightly down 18th Street, okay, and it has a hill on it. The hill is slippery, and we'd like to see if we could do a very simple set of stairs there. Possibly adding a porta potty for seasonal, because we have a lot of people who require that. And we'd like to, in the 5th one, we'd like to investigate establishing a memorial plaque program so that we could do ongoing funding to be used for upgrades and improvement in the park along the way. We've already been open a number of years. It's time we started planning. Okay? Current park is small. First thing people say when they come in is it's small. I explain to them that it's great because the dogs all play around their feet. However, an expanded area would allow for less congested play. This is looking, so help me, Edward. This is looking up the street, north, I believe. Yeah. Okay, that's the north fence. And if you see, we're looking at the idea of expanding maybe 1, 2, 3 trees down, just moving that fence backwards. Okay. That area used to be cemetery. Mr. Allen has kindly told us that we could investigate if that was the case by doing test holes. So that would be part of the project. And we would like to do this so we could divide a small section off the existing park on the other side and use the existing double gated area. Those of you who have never been to a dog park don't realize that the idea of a double gate is so dogs aren't running free. The idea is your dog comes leashed and leaves leashed, and so you stay with your dog when you're there. So we could use that safe entrance as well. If you switch to the next slide, this is not to scale. This is just my first attempt at drawing, okay? The current blue area is actually what we have now, okay? Our proposal is that we put in a new gate in our existing area that just comes off the parking, you can see 18th Street along the side, expand in that way, and basically have two parts. Our only, actually, in the number of years, 6 years we've been out, our only conflict in this part, believe it or not, has been creating an area for small dogs, because some small dogs will not play with larger dogs. This will allow us to use our gate at the end, so we've still got a two-gated system, and have two different areas. Okay? So next slide. Told you about that would be quiet. Can we go back one? Sorry, I missed the box. We figure about, well, I figured, unfortunately, my estimator is no longer with me. My husband was very good at it. We figure about 300 or 400 feet of fence, fabrics, post, etc., plus the installation, and 248 would do that. Would be what we would need for that. Okay. My second proposal is a shelter. It is hot there in the summer. It is perishingly hot, and the dogs need somewhere to lie down under. It doesn't seem to bother them as much as us. And in the winter, it's cold. And sometimes in the spring, it's raining. And dogs play regardless. Okay, we want it to be located near the division of the park so it can be used by both sides, but it will be mainly in the large dog area. We're also thinking that if we have a structure that has wooden posts, that we can use that as a base for our memorial plaques, which I'll talk about a bit later. And it will also create a building that will attract people to the park. Because a number of people come by and say, I didn't see the dog park. And we keep it that way because we haven't, touch wood, have animals in it yet. The next slide, please. This is our proposal. Okay, a couple of our members, not me, actually Edward was responsible for this, got some quotes on what labor and material would cost to build this simple structure. It has no sides intentionally. We don't want it to have sides. And it has posts that can be used again for those memorial plaques. So we're talking about 1,500. Okay, and where your input is in whether we could get the labor to do, the city labor to do these projects, or whether we could use our donated labor to do them. Next slide, please. This is Edward Dean. He went over town and decided that this would be, and I agree with him, this would be a lovely, simple way to have stairs. That parking lot is downhill. We have a number of seniors. They don't need handrails, but they do need to avoid slipping. It's sandy in the summer, it's slippery in the spring, and it's killer in the wintertime. The minute that ground freezes, you're on a roll. So a simple set of stairs like this one, it doesn't have to be complex, would help us avoid falls. In addition, I hate to say it because I know I'm the dog training, the pulling dog doesn't help. Fortunately, the dogs are pulling uphill. Okay, next please. Number of our frequent visitors have suggested that a washroom would be beneficial, and we just wanted to see the feasibility of a porta potty for seasonal use. It doesn't have to be fancy again. We're dog people, we get along. Okay. Ongoing financial support, you notice I bold and underlined that because this was actually Mr. Allen's idea that we investigate this, and I think it's an excellent idea. We have some funds in an account, but we want to look at something that will keep this park going, and if it needs to expand or needs to be upgraded or things need to be replaced, we want to be able to have a fund to do that. Most of you who are pet owners or dog owners, some of you who are dog owners realize that pets are actually part of your family. Okay? And some would like to memorialize their dog when they die in simple little plaques like this. We look at the next slide, please. Our proposal is pet owners would be able to purchase a plaque and have it installed on one of the posts in the shelter. Okay? We could do a structure where it would be $50 to $100 for this privilege. And I see that if somebody loses a pet, it very often times their actual playmates at the park will donate to this as well. Okay? And these funds would be directed to further improvements and upgrades of the dog park. The next slide, please. The next slide, let me become a dog trainer again. This is the thank you, and I'm also going to leave you with this message. This was yesterday, this picture was taken. Okay, and I'm going to tell you a little story about each of the dogs. The shepherd, the black shepherd on that side, came to the dog park 2 months ago. and would barely move. She was so scared, she was so frightened. Okay, her family is a young family. They just had a baby, lots of things on their plate. The husband's here, the wife's home recovering from the C-section. He's exercising the dog, so the dog is quiet and he's a little baby. Okay, the dog in the middle is actually an American Staffordshire Terrier. You guys will all recognize that as an adult as what you would probably call a pit bull. Okay, or anybody looking at it would be a pit bull. It is vital that Amstaffs, Staffordshire Terriers, pit bulls, any of the bully breeds be well socialized up until the age of 2, or they can become or look aggressive. And all that dog has to do at any one of us is lift a lip and go, ooh, aggressive pit bull. So this is vital for that dog to stay in a cage. That other dog, the little beaked one there on the other side, is my foster dog. I'm taking care of that dog for a family who's adopting a baby. It is a young adolescent dog who has taken a particular liking to my couch and the stuffing within. Hence, I am bringing it out to socialize it. It's been well socialized. It's done the dog lesson. And boy, was it better behaved yesterday. Okay? So that's the story I'd like to leave you with. And I can probably tell you a story about every dog in that park and how that park goes. So thank you very much for your time. Does anybody have any questions?
Thanks, you did a great job presenting. You said you were nervous, but you did fabulous.
I just talk a lot when I'm nervous.
I have a question from the gentleman
Yes.
in the back.
Gary Smith here. Kathy, is there any consideration for possibly improving the security? I have Jack Russell, who is a famous escape artist.
Oh, that's right, you do, I remember that.
Yeah, that's why we don't go there.
Actually, last year, we walked around and put in landscape ties. We bought landscape ties, the moss landscape, and put it in around. If it is not appropriate for, like, if your dog is getting out in a certain area, you email me and let me know, I'll come and plug it.
Okay.
What he's talking about is actually at the maintenance gate. There's about that big. And the only dogs that really want to go through that are Jack Russells to get the deer on the other side.
Right.
So we just put landscape ties.
I have another question from the gentleman in the back.
Yes.
My name's Nigel James and I live in Bryson Place in Brentford. It was some time ago that I owned a dog and took him along to, when I say owned a dog, I handled the dog. I don't believe really one can you own an animal because it's otherwise it's
Oh, I believe they own
often
me.
called slavery. However, we tend to drop into things like children have become kids and they are not kids. I did actually leave a message with Mrs.
Novokshina.
Sorry, yes.
It's okay.
Her phone to discuss a potential of another site for a dog park. And this one I looked at, and I feel that the current dog park, while it's ideal for us all, it's not quite in the right place. And there's a better place for another dog park, which is at the confluence of the Kettle and the Granby Rivers. There is about, I should think, an acre of ground, lovely cottonwood trees for shade. It would be easily to be fenced off on one side. And there is a slight snag, I believe, and that is it's Crown property. And of course I made inquiries about it. And here my comment would be, it's probably better to ask for forgiveness rather than for permission. It's just a thought that maybe.
I think that would be an excellent plan for a second park. I mean, I think we're almost to that stage.
And also it's nearer to, far closer to the camping site and so on. And we looked at, I personally looked around the camping site, the city park for another potential that would, there's nowhere there really without eking into the park.
Yeah, and just a brief history, we did look at, and we had help from the city when they donated that property. The property that we currently have was donated by the city. We put in money to buy some of the fencing fabric. For those of you who weren't on city council, I'm not sure you're aware of that. And I don't know what city council's opinion is on that area as well. I mean, we're in the process now of creating a log system so we can tell you how many people are actually using the park. And perhaps that might be a next step for us and a good idea.
Councilor O'Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just out of curiosity, with two questions, I guess. The first one is, in the past, when this dog park was first installed or the fencing was put up and it began to be used, I know there was a couple of neighbors there that I received phone calls from. They felt that they weren't necessarily brought into the process as much as they should have been. And if at some point this was to be approved, an expansion of the current dog park, is there any sort of, is the dog park group going to try to bring in the neighborhood and make
Well,
neighborhood support? Or would you want the city to do
Well,
that, or is
No,
it?
Jane, actually along that street, Jamie the Labradoodle comes to regularly dog play across the street. If anybody walks by, it's always been my role, and I've tried to model this for people, to invite them in. I've always been open to people asking or giving me their concerns about it, because really barking dogs aren't in anybody's best interest, including the dogs, and that would be what I would say. I would think that probably the biggest complaint along there might be parking, because sometimes we get 8 or 10 cars. I would think would be the biggest complaint. But I don't know if City Hall has received any complaints. I haven't heard about them.
I've brought them up in the past here. I'm
certainly open to going and talking to neighbors.
Okay,
Absolutely.
fair enough. And the second question, I'm not sure if it's for you, Mr. Mayor, to our CEO, or the dog park, but who takes on liability in terms of installing stairs, if an animal attacks a person within the confines of that space? Do you carry insurance? Do we carry the insurance? Where's the liability?
We don't carry insurance, but we do have a posted sign clearly stating that you're responsible for your dog and your children when you're in there. We have a sign that states that. If we need an additional sign, same as using, I don't know what the top line does for liability insurance.
I'm sure we carry that.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, what I would do is I'd check with our Rock Shepherd, who's our MIA representative with the city. But the city, with the stairs and stuff, we would carry the liability with the stairs. When it comes to the animals themselves, the owners should be carrying through their home insurance some coverage. Once it gets beyond that, the city would be having some risk in that situation, just like any other public space, whether it's down the streets or in any other park, the city would have those risks associated with it.
And one of our sign things says that this aggressive dog must be removed from the park immediately. So if your dog has a fight, out you go. You can spend 10 minutes out, calm your dog down and try again. But if I'm there, I'm following really closely.
Thank you.
To our CEO, we could also post a sign, the city will not be held responsible, like hotels do, for any damages caused by. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mrs. Namalkno, are you asking the city for the funding and the labor to do this, or are you trying to raise the funds and asking the city to provide the labor? I'm not really clear on the ask.
We have some funding in our bank account, okay, and probably enough to cover this, just barely, to cover the same situation we had before, where we provided funding for materials, but the city did the labor. I think at the time, the city felt that if they did the labor, especially with installation of the fence, it would certainly look prettier than if we, do you know what I mean? And I think that was the feeling at the time. So I think what we're asking is this time, because we have some funding for the labor in particular for this and the installation. But I'm sure we can put it towards that.
Councilor Thompson.
Just as a follow-up, you're probably not a registered society, but
We're not.
I would suggest perhaps you have a talk with George Longdon, who is the grants chair for the Gates Foundation.
Yeah, they gave us grant for some of the first money, but we could probably ask again because it's 5 years old.
Yes, because they do have an animal welfare.
That's a really good suggestion.
Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I went down there yesterday just to take a look at it, and I've been by before, and I had to go look again. It's so small. And I don't blame you for asking for it to be expanded, definitely.
When it first got built, we were very excited because we'd spent a while fundraising And every time somebody walked in, they went, oh my God, it's small. And there's a picnic table in there. So we'd all sit around the picnic table, and about 3 minutes into the play, I'd look, and all the dogs were playing around in the corner with us. All of them. And I said, you know, it looks small, but look where they all are. They're within reach of us. And the dangers of a large dog park are if something starts to go wrong, you can't get there quick enough. So it's actually not bad, and the expansion would actually give those herding breeds a little more running water.
Yeah. I'm just curious what our CAO had said about having to do testing to see if it's still a cemetery site.
That was the problem we ran into, sorry.
The first one?
That was the problem we ran into in the last time. They weren't sure whether it is quite far from the nearest grave marker, but if somebody was concerned that, if that is a concern, Mr. Allen mentioned that.
That sounds costly to have to do, of course.
Well, yeah, there would be samples that be done because there has been, we've experienced in the past where we've found human remains in other portions of our lands that were not clearly marked. So for us to, before we went and embarked upon this, we would have to determine that there are no human remains in certain areas. So there would be a cost for that. A series of holes approximately 6 feet deep that would have to be dug down to determine if there is human remains there and in unmarked spots.
Are there any other questions? May I have a motion the council receives for information to discussion the request from Mr. Buckhoff of the Grand Forks Dog Park requesting expansion improvement to the current Grand Forks Dog Park. Councilor Thompson, Councilor Hammond, all in favor? So carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, so when we look at the fundraiser piece, the council decides to do this at a regular council meeting. It'll take some time for us to set up a process for the accounts receivable for these things, so our organization is prepared for receiving the funds for like the memorials. Make sure we set up a proper bylaw so that will be brought forward to council. The other components related to the budget, we would have to refine that and then look at the opportunities for refining the overall costs before it comes back, before council makes a decision on that, so council knows.
Our next delegation is the Grand Forks Deer Committee. We will receive a verbal report providing information on the deer collaring program.
Just get over here for a minute. Thank you.
Okay, do you have the?
The thing?
The presentation.
It's up there.
Look at that. Good morning, Apple.
Happy Monday.
Haven't had enough coffee, obviously. Yeah, so we just wanted to give you an update on where the deer collaring project is standing now, and an update on the count. So on the 21st, a group of us went out at 6 a.m. and in the 5 zones, we won't deal with the slides just yet. We went up to the 5 zones that we've sort of carved out for our city, and we counted 166 here. That number, as I've said before, probably represents around half of what we have. We got them before they fawned. Usually their mating is done in November, and they have a gestation of 7 months, so we caught it before that. So there are new animals going to be born here shortly to add to that number. So we have no shortage of deer. I think I mentioned before that Cranbrook, when they undertook a cull, they had counted just under 100, and that represented a problem to a city that's 5 times the size of Grand Forks, just so you know. Okay, so moving into our deer collaring project. This was done in November, actually just before the election. And there was 2 biologists, or two vets from the University of Calgary that were using an experimental drug to, a non-narcotic, to put down the deer so that we could take various measurements and affix a radio collar to it. The radio collar is of a design that in between, it's a rubber, kind of a rubber collar, but to, yeah, let's go through it.
Okay, so we did this presentation to the Rotary Club a couple of weeks ago, but just a quick, the Deer Committee were established in 2009 as an ad hoc committee to the City of Grand Forks. We're all volunteers on the committee, and we make recommendations to council and undertake volunteer tasks such as educational material, public surveys, communications with ICBC, Ministry of Transportation, local businesses. We do background research. We've talked with PETA lots, protection against the ethical treatment of animals. And we also came up with a management plan for conflict and population reduction actions. Next slide. So yeah, just a quick look at the counts. This current year actually isn't on this slide for the springtime, but we count 5 zones in the city, all at the same time, so that there's no double counting. And we do 2 counts a year, spring and fall time, and we try to do it at the same time each year. So the numbers have gone up and down. There was a big peak in 2009, and then it's gone down, and it appears we're peaking again. I didn't know the number for the spring count. I missed it, but
Yeah, as you can see, for April 2014, it's over 150, about 100. I think the number was actually 166.
Okay.
So we're there again this year.
yeah. Next slide. So to understand more, we decided that it would be a good idea to collar some deer. There's no, there hasn't really been any research on urban deer before to understand what they're doing and whatnot. So the City of Grand Forks purchased 9 GPS collars. A team was established, so that consisted of a wildlife biologist with the Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations, 2 veterinarians from the University of Calgary, because they use these deer in a study that they're doing with this new drug, as Gary mentioned. A Selkirk College student came out as well. He was also doing a project on this data, so that's neat to have that connection. The conservation officer, and then Gary and myself as well. So some of the questions that we are hoping to be answered is, what's the home range for urban deer? Do these home range sizes differ from our wild deer? Do urban deer migrate? Do they leave town? Are they just staying in town? Are there seasonal differences in their home range and causes of mortality as well? So here's a picture of us. There you can see the pink darts that are in their bum. There's 2 actually. Sometimes they need a little bit of top up to make sure that they were completely sedated. And it was pretty nerve-wracking working in a public area as well, because you sure don't want to lose one of those darts or your deer. But it went really successful. We had enough people and eyes watching the deer as soon as they were darted and went down. So it was.
And it only typically took, a maximum of 10 minutes for them to be down and out. So.
Yeah, it was in the normal drug that they use. It can take up to an hour and a half for the animal to recover from this kind of thing. But with this new drug that this guy's testing, it was like took us like 20 minutes to gather the data we did on the deer, and it took like 5 minutes for the drug to bring them out of it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Next slide. So there's another picture of when the deer was sedated, and the towel is usually covering its head to make sure that there's no, stops the stimulus in their eyes and ears and stuff. Next slide. So we did different things. Also, we tagged we took a biopsy of the tissue in their ear. We tagged them in their ear. The vets took blood samples for their own purposes, but also you can tell this if the animal's stressed and that kind of thing.
Hair samples.
Hair samples for the ministry, they always do that, and some fecal samples. Slide. There's Gary with his task taking some,
I told a very bad joke just a few minutes before. They stuck me with the chore.
Yeah. Next slide. There's one of the vets too working with the deer below observation. And we also weighed the deer as well. There was a big sack.
Big blanket and we just rolled it on there and picked it up.
Next slide. There's Gary, I think
That's
probably
the reversal drug.
putting in the reversal drug, yeah. So it was literally under 5 minutes and these deer kind of gave a little head wag and jumped up and ran away. It was incredible. Next slide. So there's one of the deer fitted with one of the collars. There's a piece of, I believe it was fire hose put in between, and it's supposed to rot a lot faster than the leather, of course. So these collars are supposed to rot off probably in about 2 years. So then you don't have to, stress the animal out again by recapturing and taking the collar off. Next slide. So these GPS collars are, they take 2 locations a day. The big cost for these GPS collars is batteries. So we went with the cheapest we could to be able to maximize our sample size. So there was nine collars put out. 2 locations a day are taken. So this was a few weeks back that I did this, but so in real time we can see this data as well. So I could go on the program and pull up where these 9 deer were this morning at 7 a.m. So 7 a.m., 7 p.m. Location is taken. And like I said, this was probably a month or 2 ago that I did up this map, but you can kind of see the different colors of the different animals, and so far, at least in the winter months, they seem to be sticking to their little areas. I did just a quick draw across the areas, and it's about 300 meters so far that they're moving. So they really don't
And the
move
great
very
thing
far.
about this too is that we'll be able to take snapshots and seasonal snapshots and separate the data out, so we can see if their behavior changes over time and seasons.
Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, it's just a little zoomed in shot as well, looking at the locations. So we tried to get deer across the city as well, across the range, but just logistics and safety reasons, we kind of concentrated on Riverside, and then by the cemetery, it seemed like those 2 locations were the most successful in finding the deer and then just being in a safe area as well. Next slide. Yeah. So since then, I think it was 2 days after the collaring process, there was 1 deer that was hit and struck by a vehicle and killed. And then there was also some complaints to the SPCA about the collars. A couple of the deer have the collars have rubbed their hair off a little bit, so it looks a little shocking, I guess. But there was a lot of conversation that went around between the provincial veterinary, the wildlife veterinarian, and the local or wildlife biologist in Nelson, just talking about it, and they've never seen it before. And usually these collars don't cause any harm, but the one that had the most hair damage, Aaron Reed, our wildlife biologist, did come over and remove that collar. So currently now there's 7 collars.
And just so you know, when they examine the deer upon taking the collar off, deer, their skin is red. So it would appear that it's chafing, when in fact it's not. When Craig was at the last meeting, he said when they took it off, he had said, you shouldn't have taken it off, because the deer is not, being negatively impacted by the collar. So just so you know, that consideration for the animals is pretty paramount. So we don't want any undue harm to come to them, and there is no undue harm coming to them. So any questions? Yes.
Thanks, that's interesting. It's interesting to see the patterns up there. I do have concerns about the rubbing on the neck too, because I've seen another couple of deer that are completely bald on their necks on Riverside. And I'm just wondering, when the mosquitoes come out, are they gonna start getting bitten in that area and have irritation from that?
Good question. I'm sure that the hair is protective for bugs, right? But I guess they could possibly get more bites in the neck area. But you know, they know where to go to avoid bugs. It's lots of research shows that animals move around too. They know where the worst, the best places are to avoid bugs. But sure, they could get more mosquito bites on their neck.
The biologist would keep an eye on it for sure.
Yeah. But really good question.
How much longer are the collars on for?
I think we're hoping to get at least a year's worth of data. So 2 years would be nice.
2 years to the
Yeah, and by 2 years they should start rotting off. Yeah. But of course, if there's big concerns from the public, that's the most important thing, and the well-being of the animal as well. And if the collars need to come off sooner, then they need to come off sooner.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Just a question. When the deer were sedated and samples taken and that, are they in good health? They, quite frankly, that's my concern, is that they do not look healthy. The ones that I see around my house.
Yeah, well, right now they're, of course, molting, right? So they're losing hair, which is just a part of their natural cycle. So they look a little ragged and whatnot, but they were actually, 8 of the 9 deer were actually in very good health. The one that actually died was the unhealthy one, right? Remember?
I don't know. I can't remember. Yeah. But we did talk about that with the vets, and if there was data that they were taking that we could actually get an indication of that. And we need to follow up with the vets on what their labs analyzed
What their
are
blood
for, and
tests and all that.
if there is like kind of a comparison to the back country animals. But a lot of times you can tell by the marrow and the bone, but that's of course after they're dead and whatever. But yeah.
Any other questions? Gentlemen, actually.
Okay, Donna Semenoff. My question has to do with the stats. I saw there was the peak in 2009 that you also brought attention to, and then went down and up. What do you account for the variations after? Like, why do you think the population went down after?
There's so many variables and factors that work on wildlife population numbers. Could be food, climate, predation. Could have been a really hard year with, I'm assuming the number one mortality in this town is vehicle hits. So that could have happened. It could have been a really cold winter as well. I can't really remember that winter, but there's lots of things, and it's hard to say point to one reason, but yeah.
And also just the nature of the count. I mean, it's generally 2 people in a car, one driving, one counting. So I mean, it's not what you would consider a scientific count.
Well, it's as scientific as we can make it, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not complete.
Yeah.
Again, we speculate that we're counting about half the animals. So
yeah, it's
there's
not
a lot
like
of
we're
variation in
counting numbers. We're looking for trends. So we're assuming if we're counting wrong, at least we're counting it wrong every time, or we're counting it right every time. So not that we can go on the direct numbers, but we can take some advice from the trends that are happening. Yeah.
Gentleman in the first row.
Frank Treveri. I was just wondering, how close are we towards getting the solution to the problem, or are we just treading water? We do the counts year in and year out. We now have put collars to find out where the deer are. Is there going to be some sort of solution to the problem, or am I going to have to completely fence off my yard so that my roses can survive?
We didn't have an official meeting last time because there was missing members, but we're working towards it. I'm gonna hook up with Rolly Russell, because anything we do here, we need some help or assistance with, or make a connection with the Area D, because that would be where the solution provided here would just be filled in by here in the Area D area. So, yeah, we're working on it. We're getting there. We're getting there.
And there's multiple, it depends what the problem is, right? And then we always come back to that in the Deer Committee. You should come to a meeting once. It's a lot of fun. And a lot of good conversation happens. And in some people's mind, the problem is not deer numbers in their yard. It's it's more the people side of thing, right? And people feeding them and whatnot. So there's a lot of problems and a lot of different solutions. And it's always a challenge in the meetings in the committee.
Yeah, I just, I'd like to still be here when there's some sort of solution to the problem. You know?
The lady in front of me.
Yes, thank you, Beverly Tripp. I didn't realize this was on the agenda today. I'm very glad I'm here to hear about the committee issue. And my concern would be, like Frank, what will happen with the information once it's compiled, and when would decisions take place? I, for one, was hit in my car by a deer right out the back of City Hall. Took off the mirror of my Jeep. It literally smashed off the mirror of my Jeep and jumped onto my hood and cracked my windshield and left dents on my Jeep. Right out here when I was driving up the road, just driving to another destination. It came screaming out of the alleyway there. And so, yeah, I was hit by a deer. So, they're a real issue in town.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
traffic problems.
Yeah.
It's a big concern.
Well, right now, that's the biggest management thing that's going on, is deer vehicle collisions, DVCs they call them. And that's how the population is being managed mostly. We pay some of the highest insurance rates in BC as a direct result of that.
And between Rock Creek and Christina Lake, we do have the highest collision rates in the province.
It was like 400 or something last year.
And we do try and keep ICBC in the loop and they're always invited to our meetings, but we don't have so much of a presence with them.
Councilor Bethel.
Zoe, I'll just talk louder. I'm used to little ones around. Inasmuch as the population of Grand Forks voted at the last election that they'd like to see a call done, and as much as deer are a provincial jurisdiction, we have to jump through the provincial government's hoops before we're allowed to do a call. We can't just go ahead and do one. So as far as I understand it, the collaring program and enforcing of the no feeding bylaw are steps along that path we have to take in order to get to a call. Even though I'd rather see them all collected into a little petting farm, it seems like a cull is where we're headed. So if there are fines, I guess the bylaw enforcement officer will be speaking to this later. If there have been fines levied for deer feeding, how that process is going with the enforcement. And what are our timelines now that we've done these two steps to getting to a call? Is that something we could expect to see this fall?
Yes. Yes. That's what we're working towards. Yeah. So,
And there's only
bring that, because eventually it's just going to be a recommendation of our committee to council, and council is going to make a final decision on it.
Where's Gail, Mr. Allen?
So just a step for council, and when council goes to UBCN this year, the council might ask for a meeting with Minister Thompson to present all of their data that they have and suggest to him that you would like to, if council wanted to expedite the call, that you would be able to present all the data that you captured and be able to say to the minister, now you're asking for the permit to call. And it'll be a decision that council will get the permission to. Doesn't mean you're going to do it at that moment, but you'll get the permission to do so. Then you start your public consultation, the community engagement process, and they let them know what's going to be happening, when and where, and then it'll move into the activist stage, and then it'll move on down the line. So it'll become an ongoing process, which I don't see us realistically undertaking this fall, more likely into the new year, being realistic.
Well, it depends. Like our committee is prepared to start working with other communities that are, either in the process or working towards it. And that was kind of the consensus of our last meeting, even though it wasn't official. But to get together with other communities, the ministry has already established its committee, and we just need to start really taking those baby steps now towards getting something comprehensive on their table. So,
Lady in the second row, and then Councilor
This is a follow-up to Jenny's comment or invitation for people to come to the meetings. How does the public know when and where the meetings are?
Carrie?
Well, I don't know,
We would post them
In what locations?
on our posting board.
Yeah.
On our down the bottom of the stairs on the entrance to 4th Street, we have a posting board where all of our meeting information is posted.
Oh, okay, that you can see through the window? That
Yes.
one? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Councillor Hammond.
I think calling the deer is one thing. I think what Gary has suggested with working with Area D, Rolly Russell is very important, because if we call the deer here in the city, we're gonna have the same problem again unless we get to the root of the problem, which is expanding from Area D. We've gotta find out why are they coming into the city. Once we've enforced the bylaws, the no feeding, and there's a reduction of available food for them here, we need to look at what can we do to keep them in their natural habitat and to have them continue with their natural migrations so that they don't continue to be a problem, because root cull isn't cheap, it's very expensive. There's a lot of problems associated with it, between lobby groups or illegals or vandalization of equipment. So I think it's really important that we work together with Area D and look at how do we maintain the natural habitat and provide them with enough food so that they don't come back into the city.
Councillor Butler and then Councillor Burchett.
Thanks. Just a follow-up to Ms. Sevnoff's question about the Deer Committee meetings. Is there a place where the public can go to read the minutes from the Deer Committee meetings so that if they can't make it to the meeting, they can see what's taken place?
Mr. Mayor. When the meetings have been completed, the minutes should be submitted to corporate services, who then would attach them into an agenda for council, so then they would be made public, so they'd be part of the meeting minutes of council. So committee of the whole would then get those meeting minutes and they would adopt them and then they go to council. So it just naturally goes through our progression.
and just, so everyone's aware, the committee is composed of members of the committee. And if there are members of the public that wish to sit in, it doesn't mean it's participatory. Just because we don't want, it's hard to do business if you've got perhaps some special interest groups on either side, essentially filling the house and slowing down the work. So.
Councillor Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we're exhausted quite a bit. I want to thank you two for your presentation and the report itself. I do want to do a calling program. I'm not calling anything else of that nature, so for that, I will recommend to council that we receive the report for information.
You had a question, gentleman in the back.
One thing, I've heard this before, do the deer in this area migrate, the actual deer that live outside the city? Do they move seasonally?
Well, this was a big question from, also one of the members of our committee was concerned about that. So this is kind of, part of the collaring project to see, if they are going out of, but there's seasonal migrations, there's,
That's what I'm curious about.
population
The deer that don't live in the
migrations.
city that live in this area, do they actually migrate?
so far, it appears not, but it'd be good to have a year of data before we can speculate more on that. So, but currently they have about a 4-block home range.
Thank you for your presentation. We had a motion from Councillor Burchett. Do I have a second from Councillor Thompson? Any discussion further? All in favor? So carried.
Thank you.
Thanks for the time.
Moving on to our presentation from staff, from our fire chief, fire department questions.
Oh, we're going, don't worry.
Well,
Morning, Mr. Mayor, Council. I just wanted to, with the arrival of the new fire truck coming, sounds like in June, I just want to go over all our reasoning for purchasing the truck and our steps that we took with regard to communications, et cetera, prior to the acquisition of the truck. So our current ladder truck is a 1992 aerial. It's a 50-foot aerial. It has expired due to fire underwriters requirements. It has expired. It's ended its service life. We will be selling it. When we had a service review by Firewise Consulting in 2011, I think it was, and at that time they proposed that we replace it, and we replace it with a 100-foot platform. And that was partly for protection of not only the residents, but also of industry and multi-story buildings, et cetera, because things have changed since 1992. In January of 2013, I came to council, and we made our proposal to council to purchase the truck, or to order the truck. That was approved. In June of 2013, we had an open house. We held an open house. They had about 75 people attended the open house. Very, very good feedback, very positive feedback on the proposal. And through most all of the surveys that we received back, we did exit surveys with everyone attending, or the ones that would fill them out, and they were all very positive. In July, there was an article in the newspaper that summarized the proposal. In August, we made a presentation to the Rotary, which is a business community in town, with regards to our proposal. In October, we're also at, in October, we sent out the RFP for the fire truck, and it closed in December. In January, on the approval of council, we awarded the bid to Rosenbauer. And at that time, council had approved up to 1.3 million in spending for the fire truck because of the volatility of the dollar at that time. Since then, we have secured some funds in American dollars, which has saved us lots of money thanks to our chief financial officer. And it's looking a lot like the fire truck's going to come in well under the 1.3 million. January, we attended an open house at the art gallery and answered some more fire truck questions there. In February, downtown Rebite open house, we were at that and also answered some questions there. So, and then like I say, in June, we're flying down, myself and two others are flying down on May 19th to the factory to do a final detail on the fire truck. And then it should be here probably second week of June. I'm hoping it will go to Fire Chiefs Conference trade show, and Rosenbauer is going to show it off there, and they're quite excited to be able to do that. So having said that, we'll go through the PowerPoint, and this was pretty much PowerPoint that we made presentations with former council on back in January of 2013, I think it was, something like that, 2014, long time ago. Anyways, okay. Okay, so this is just what the PowerPoint's going to explain. Long-term fleet replacement, fire underwriter schedule, the benefits of the extended reach, the factors would be the performance expectations, public fire protection classification, commercial and industrial insurance rates, and residential insurance rate grades, and we'll wrap up with the cost of the ratepayers. Okay. Okay, so the current apparatus, as I said a few minutes ago, is 20 years old. It was 20 years old at that time. It's approaching 23 now. And fire underwriter said, as far as fire grade rating credits, we are getting none for it anymore. And we need to replace it with a new engine. Okay, next. Okay, this was out of the Firewise Consulting report, and it stated Grand Forks Fire Department has a fleet replacement plan which calls for a replacement for the ladder 4 in 2013. Consideration should be given to the size and type of replacement for this vehicle, recognizing the risk at the industrial plant plants, multi-story apartment buildings, large recreation and institutional buildings in the community. Any type of new apparatus is a long-term purchase, and the needs of the community should be factored in, so the new apparatus will still be meeting the needs of the community at the end of its service life. And the recommendation on the bottom there was 100-foot aerial platform. In the fire service, when we buy fire equipment, and especially fire trucks because they cost a lot of money, we don't buy for our needs today. We buy for our needs 20 years down the road because that's the life expectancy of our trucks. So anything we're going to buy, we need to feel comfortable that it's going to be able to handle the task in 20 years from now. Okay, next. Okay, service schedule fire underwriter survey grades apparatus ability to perform as frontline equipment based on its age. And Grand Forks is a medium-sized city. And this is how fire underwriters grade our community. So 0 to 15 years is for a medium-sized city is first line duty truck. 16 to 20 is called a reserve or a second line duty truck. 20 to 25 years, you get no credit in grading. And 26 to 29, also no credit, and over 30, you're definitely not getting anything, for sure. And that's how they grade, okay? Okay, in 2011, we did a rescue at Interport. And this is just a couple pictures of the rescue. We had our 50-foot ladder truck there at that time. And we were barely able to get to the top of that structure. And it's a little bit hard to see there, but we actually had the 2 people we rescued out of the basket. We actually had them step on a spine board, which was on part of the framing of that. Yeah, it was a pretty dangerous situation, right? And very unsafe for everybody, not only the people we rescued, but our own volunteers, right? So that was one of the things we said, you know what, we need a piece of equipment a little bigger than that, right? Okay, next. There you go. Next thing we did, this was, we'll go back one. Yeah, that's okay. This is just when we were trying out some trucks. Some of you may have seen the odd aerial truck come through town a couple years back, and we were trying out. This was parked right on 68, and we were able to get right over top of that apartment building there with a 100-foot platform. Okay, next.
That's a 100-foot ladder?
That's a 100-foot platform, yeah, yeah. Okay, this is just a pie chart showing what's gone on in our community in the last few years. To no one's surprise, we're getting older, and senior age citizens are making up 29% of the city's population. And over the last 15 years, the sector of the population has experienced quite a growth. In 1996, seniors represented 20%, and in 2006, 25%. Like I say, now it's 29%, probably getting a little bit higher than that. And I can't remember, it's somewhere in the 60 range, 60-year-old range. It's actually something like 45% of the population of the city. Okay. Okay, this is a couple things that we will be able to do with our new aerial truck because it is bigger and it is longer. And in the old days, the fire department used to just fight fire. We don't do that anymore. Now now we're into swift water rescue, hazmat, confined space, rope rescue, auto X, like all that stuff. So our equipment demands have changed from years ago when we were only fighting fire. And there's just a couple pictures of what we do, or what the fire service does. And a couple more pictures. One of the big benefits of the new ladder truck will be the higher elevated water streams. That allows us to get right over top of the fire and drill right down into the fire, and makes extinguishment a lot quicker, right? And of course, then we're saving a lot more of the structures, right? Okay. Okay, fire underwriters classifications. They've got 2 sides to it: commercial and industrial, and residential. And the next couple slides here will show you. Okay, and this is how they rate us. they rate us in 4 different criteria. The first one being water supplies and distribution, which is 30%. Fire department operations, that's what we do, is 40%. Fire service communications, 10%, and fire prevention and safety control is 20%. That's how they grade us in our community. Okay, and this is from Michael Curry. He's the head of fire underwriters for Western Canada. And he said a community that protects significant risks, example, multifamily, residential, industrial, et cetera, is measured against its ability to protect against those risks. Okay, and as the public fire protection classification in a community improves, so does competition within the insurance market. This has a significant impact for business owners and can be an attractive feature of a community with respect to business development. Okay, so we're currently rated as 6 on public fire protection classification. We're currently rated as the 6 for our size of community. There's just a list of a bunch of the other communities around our size as well. So we're placed very well in that. And always in the fire department, we're striving to improve. We're hoping that with the improvements to water supply in the West End, et cetera, in the not too distant future, we may be able to get to a 5 rating.
Okay, so what is the scale?
Scale 1 to 10 on commercial, sorry.
1 being the highest?
1 being the best, yeah. And and just on that note, there's only 1 fire department in Canada that has a 1, and that's in Ottawa or something. It's back in Ontario anyways.
That's full-time staff.
Yeah, that's full-time everything. Full-time everything.
What will our new rating be once the truck is?
The truck, currently, it'll probably still be at a 6 on commercial, but there's as a couple slides back showed, there's 4 different criteria to improving the grade rating. And we've improved our training, we're improving our equipment, we're improving our West End water supply, and we don't have an issue with our communication. It's always been good, right? And we are dispatched out of trail, and that's a big plus for us. So we're hoping we can move to a 5, right? And we'll show you here in a minute the differences. Did you have a question? No? Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay, so here's your ratings. At a 7, 6, and 5, we'll use hotels because that's the most expensive one there. And at a 7, they're $45,821. If we move to a 6 where we are, they save 13% on their insurance rates. And if we move to a 5, they'd save 23%. So it's significant in the commercial side of things for us to have this piece of equipment and to move forward. Okay, I mean, when we're looking at development and trying to attract business, et cetera, that's encouraging. When you see that, that's encouraging. That's what helps the business decide where they're going. Okay. Okay, on the residential side, it's rated from 1 to 5, and we're currently at a rating of 2. And we can't get any better than 2 unless we have full-time staff. And otherwise, we have 2, which gives us fully protected rating. And again, you can see the difference from unprotected to semi-protected. There's, I think it's a 60% difference there. And if you go from semi-protected to fully protected, which is what we are, is another 32%, right? So that's why it's really important for us to keep our grade rating where it is, keep the ratepayers' insurance costs down, right? Because, well, you'll see, I mean, 32% increase in your insurance, no one's gonna be very happy, right? Okay. Okay, that's, okay, and then, oh, there we go. Okay, so this is just a sample of what the cost of ratepayers would be. So financing a $900,000 to $1 million fire truck over 5 years would represent a tax increase of approximately $29 per year per $100,000 of your value of your home, right? So a $300,000 home would see an increase of about $87 a year for 5 years. That's on a 5-year payout. Was how we have done this example. Okay. Okay, a 1-step drop in our insurance grade rating from the fire underwriters survey would trigger an insurance premium increase of up to 32%. So the $300,000 home, you'd see an insurance increase of $296 a year forever until you brought that rating back down. So you're gonna see an increase of $296 a year forever until you buy another fire truck. So that's why we made the purchase we made. Okay. Okay. Any questions?
Councilman Thompson.
I just want to thank you, Dale, for that excellent report that answered a lot of questions, and I support our department.
Councilor Rasheed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just echoing Councilor Thompson's remarks there. Thank you for not just the work you do, but as well as all the volunteers. I think this new apparatus in our fleet is going to be of huge importance. Like you mentioned, you know, that last part is kind of the kicker there with insurance rates going up and forever, as opposed to that 5 years and $20 per year per 100,000 assessed value. With that right there, you know, it shows the math, and you can't deny that.
Yeah.
Numbers. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Councilor Hammond.
Yes, I just wanted to say the same thing. I thank you, Dale, for presenting that, and the fact that the cost to purchase this new fire truck is actually less than what it would cost as an increase in your, not just your fire insurance, but just the increase alone in your fire insurance. So it's an investment well spent.
Okay. Great, thank you.
So may I have a motion to receive the presentation? Oh, I have a question.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Hamilton, James Hamilton. You're selling the old fire truck and bringing the new fire truck in.
Yes.
Are they the same size?
No. The old fire truck was a 50-foot aerial. The new fire truck's a 100-foot aerial.
No, I'm talking about parking size.
Length?
Yeah.
Length, no, the new truck is probably about between 15 and 20 feet longer.
Okay, so would there be any problem in the parking of that truck?
No.
So you can.
No, when our fire hall was built in 1986, all of the bays, and it was great forward-thinking by the previous fire chiefs, all the bays are drive-through bays.
Great.
So we have the ability to drive the truck right in one end and out the other. As far as
There is no need or thought of taking out these. There was talk of taking out these, what would you call them? Recycle bins.
Yes.
They're not going to be threatened by this at all.
Well, I put a proposal to council with regard to that, and it isn't because, well, it's indirectly because of the fire truck. With the new fire truck, when we return from a call, it's going to come in the rear parking lot. So we are changing the layout of the rear parking lot to allow for that truck to drive in, drive right through the bay. It can back in off the street, but there's, you know, summertime, there's been significant delays getting that truck backed in off the street. It'll be pretty crowded and tight. So we've elected to drive it in from the back. Because of that, we're going to lose, I think it's 16 parking stalls for our volunteers. And that's why we put in a proposal to move the bins to allow for parking for volunteer firefighters.
So one other question. From my understanding, is a 13% benefit to the commercial people from their insurance. Is that all the insurance companies? Because they've got different insurance companies. Will that be across the board for the commercial?
Well, that's on average. That's a statistic we got from Fire Underwriters, and that's on average. Every insurance company is different. They've all got their own certain things that they require in their communities, but that's an overall average that the Fire Underwriters gave us for reduction.
And finally, my understanding.
Mr. Hamilton, just, excuse me, can you direct your questions through the chair?
Oh, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. Please forgive me, Mr. Mayor. So basically, oh yeah, the not commercial, the residential insurance rate cannot be cannot be reduced. It can only be increased if you don't get this. So obviously, this is somebody will probably accuse fear mongering because your rates are going up to $236 if you don't do it. But I think it's a wonderful idea. So there's no way that the residents could get a reduction. The only possibility is they would be paying more if this was not coming in. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We can't get higher than we are
Right.
on a rating without going to a full-time crew.
I think
So, so we cannot get any higher, but we can certainly keep the insurance costs where they are, for sure. Yeah, with better protection.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. So, yeah, I have a motion from Councilor Rodriguez, and you have a second, Councilor Butler. All in favor? Questions from the back?
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors, and my name is Nigel James. The message is, the questions, there's a couple of questions for the Deputy Chief. He concentrated mainly on the commercial rates of insurance, which affects perhaps 500 ratepayers within the city, as against the residential ratepayers who are about 2,000 and so therefore perhaps the emphasis ought to be rather more not on the commercial but on the residential. And as I understand it, on residential we cannot get higher than grade 2, but we could drop down to grade 1. And am I right in thinking that if we drop down to grade 1, then the average increase on a $300,000 house, I think it was, is $270 odd or something like that? Is that going to be the increase?
You're going to be dropping one's
Yeah.
So that's a good step.
So there, Mr. Mayor, there would be a 32% increase in your fire insurance rates if we did not replace that truck. Or so, right? And that would be forever and ever and ever until you replace that truck. And part 2 of that question, yes, part of this, there's a 2-part to buying the new truck. First part is to keep the residential rates where they are. Second part is we need to try and attract business through development. This is all part and parcel as well. We need to look after our industrial plants and our multifamily residential places like Silver Kettle Village, which is, seniors independent and assisted living. With just a regular 50-foot ladder truck, 2 things are going to happen there. One, you're going to have to put the ladder truck right beside burning buildings, so you're probably losing your ladder truck. And 2, how many 80 to 90-year-old people are coming down a straight ladder? Pretty much none. So this way, we've got the reach. It's not the height, it's the reach that we need. So we can get that truck away from the building, plus we can still get it to the building to rescue people. We can put them in the basket and bring them to the ground. And to me, as fire chief, that makes sense.
So in other words, it's not even by choice, it's necessarily by obligation. We're almost obligated if we don't have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, that's what part of my job is, to help, protect the community. And to me, that's how I'm helping protect the community.
And as mayor's council, we're not here to decide what should be done by the underwriters.
Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. But that leads on to another question, in fact. In order to keep our good standing at level 2 on residential, a new truck is required. But it could be surely another pumper, perhaps, or a 75-foot ladder truck on a single axle, or something like that, at less cost. And therefore, it would enhance what we have got now. And at the same time, I realize that the deed is done. But the one thing that does concern me, for instance, we are now in the process, I believe, of training firefighters being able to drive the new vehicle. And that, I think, should be part of the project management cost of the whole project, as well as the alterations to the parking lot and the way that the vehicle drives through. I'm not sure that the whole thing was thought through very carefully initially, and I think we relied too much on this advisory group who suggested the whole truck. And I'm asking questions, please.
Yeah, and you're going on the line here.
The other thing is, I wonder if the fire chief can tell me what other cities near Grand Forks have got 100-foot fire trucks.
Mr. Mayor, I can certainly answer that question. Castlegar is in the process of ordering a 100-foot platform at this time, and Nelson currently has an 85-foot platform that they are replacing within the next 5 years with a 100-foot platform.
Thank you. Councilor Hammond.
Yes, I believe Chief Harriet explained it very well in his presentation, that we're not purchasing a truck for today, we're purchasing a truck for 20 years down the road, which is the life of our truck. And we need to be ready for any situation that arises. I think a lot of thought has gone into this, and I think it was a well-made decision.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion on the table? So carried. We now move on to our monthly highlight reports from department managers. Does council wish to have each department head speak on it, or our CAO, or do we just want to receive it for information?
I think this is information.
Yeah, I can answer your question. Sure.
Well, first let's have a motion to receive the monthly committee. Councilor Shagan, we have a seconder. Councilor Thompson. If there's any discussion or questions, Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in regards to one of the report items, following up on the fence at the farmland near the hospital, I'm just wondering if staff could elaborate on what's happening with that farm and with the fence?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, yeah, the owners of the land encroached onto city land and installed the fence on the municipal road right away, and the building inspector required them to move it back onto their own property. And as far as update on the farming status, I'm not up to date on what they're doing as far as what they're farming and when they're farming.
Have any other questions? Councilor Shagan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not on here, but it's a question that I kind of have just on my own, being that we're into May and people are now watering quite often in their lawns. And I know the bylaw states that you can water every second day, depending on your house number. I'm an odd house number, so I can water on every odd numbered day. And I can water 7 in the morning to 7 at night. However, or 7 to 9, or 7 to 9. No, sorry. Ooh, conservation is not talking today. Yeah, don't mind me there. Anyways, in regards to planting grass, planting shrubs, things that I have just done because one of those colored deer was nice enough to eat all my shrubs over the winter. What are the rules? Does it still apply that 7 to 9, or is there leeway in terms of planting grass and shrubs and trees? And
Generally, Mr. Mayor, when somebody's gone into an undertaking in their yard, they've gone to the extent of planting new plants, they can seek a permit from the city for an exemption for whether it's grass. Generally, the watering of trees can be achieved, but outside of that, we generally allow for a permit for grass just because of the new sodding does require more water than generally expected on an established lawn. So that can just be made through the operations department to get the permit for that. But yeah, that's generally the process.
Councilor Hammond.
I'm just curious as to the, working on the deer feeding complaints. I'm just wondering if any bylaws have been enforced and how many notices have been sent out or people dealt with directly through our bylaw officer.
To our CEO and to our bylaw officer.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council. Last Friday, Lori Grant from Wild State BC and myself toured and visited every one of the people that have had deer feeding complaints in the office. We had 2 residents that were not home that we were unable to make contact with. Of those, we only had 2 of them that say, well, I will continue. And we did inform them that as soon as I get a complaint in, my next step is to write the tickets. I have no other option at this point. And that's fine. They're prepared to deal with it. So they've all been.
Thank you. Councilor Butler and then Councilor Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To our bylaw enforcement officer, were your warnings put in writing so that we can track this when we report to the provincial government on what we've been doing?
We certainly can. It's all documented, all of our visits, everything's in a file folder in the bylaw office contained there. So we've got all that recorded.
Councilor Hammond.
I'm just wondering how these people react once they realize that by thinking that they're being kind to their animals, they're gonna end up watching them get killed. And if they realize what the impact of their actions is actually doing.
Lori and I spent quite an extensive time with a couple of the residents, the ones that want to continue feeding, and they're old-time or elderly people. One of them claims that the deer are therapeutic to his wife, who is very ill, and he says, I'm gonna continue. We tried to explain these things to them. They said, well, we understand, but. So I don't know where else you go with it, other
Perhaps we
than.
could get them a cat.
To the lady in the second row.
Thank you. Donna Semenoff. Thank you for sharing that about the reason behind it. I'm thinking about win-win. Is it possible to engage with them in a discussion of other, a pet or some other way that they can meet that need for connection with the animals?
We brought up pets and everything else. They don't want, they're adamant that watching the deer open window is therapeutic. And if they have to put food out there to attract them, they're going to. So we know who our two culprits are, our main culprits are gonna be. We'll just have to keep an eye on them. And I think once you write a few fines, then they may change their tune. A couple of the others that I thought would be an issue, once they seen the notice from council in the paper last month, have complied. So we'll just have to wait and see how this develops.
Okay. Thank you.
Gentleman in the back.
One quick question about the watering thing, just for some over the backyard conversation with my neighbors and myself. We're on Sion water, but we're in the city.
Mhm.
Do the watering restrictions the city puts out apply to us or what? I'm just curious. Because I know that argument's gonna come up.
Councilor Hammond.
Did you say you're on a well?
No, we're on Sion.
Does Sion have its own restrictions?
People are all day long.
I'm in city limits and I'm on a well, so it wouldn't affect anybody that's on a well.
Probably affects through the irrigation district that you're on.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, to the motion that's on the table. All in favor? So carried. You want to move on to our reports and discussion section, corporate services. Okay. Like to make a motion to recess. We're in recess for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
22 people participated in the open house and provided their feedback. We then took all of the information and compiled it into a single report, which is available on our website. And council had the opportunity to review that a couple of weeks before the strategic planning session, and then take any of the information and potentially use it throughout the session and in the planning stages.
So, Mr. Mayor, one of the things that we're going to be doing with this from staff, like just a couple examples, when we look at some of the things that are important, like keeping the alleyways clear in the downtown core, we're going to be implementing that as part of our kind of our own strategic things that are kind of conforming already in bylaws, and identifying where it's important for the community, for us to be able to move forward. But council's strategic priorities, from what we saw in the planning process, really involved a lot of the values that we're talking about, the sustainable community plan, a lot of the values that the community brought forward in this process. The strategic plan will be brought forward in draft form to council in a meeting, probably the committee of the whole meeting, and then that'll give the council the opportunity to speak to this a little bit more to the public in that respect of kind of what they were looking for. So we appreciate all the information, and I think it's been compiled nicely. Now we have the ability to kind of disseminate that as part of our work plans. Once council's finished their strategic priorities, then we develop our work plans, and we'll be addressing some of these items in here. But we found a lot of them met a lot of the sustainable community plan values that have already been represented by the community.
And there were some very strong common themes throughout from all of the feedback from the public, which was nice to see. Any questions?
Thank you. Oh, we have a question from the audience.
I was wondering when the strategic plan will be available to the public.
Please identify yourself.
Sylvia Trapto, City of Grand Forks.
Thank you.
When will the strategic plan be available to the public?
So,
I'll let you.
yeah, it's being, the first draft of the report is being compiled as we speak by the facilitator, so I expect in the next 2 weeks, we would see the first draft.
Answer the question. Thank you. In the back.
Gloria, will there be, I'll say, a lot more opportunity for people to input into this plan soon, or in the near future?
May I have a question?
Will there be a lot more opportunity for the public to input into the plan soon, or in the near future?
Well, we have had public input.
Yes.
Is there, if the public feels there deems to be necessary more input, is that what you're suggesting?
In respect to, upon reviewing the suggestions, there may be more ideas generated from those suggestions. This isn't the end of the thing. This should be the beginning. There's always ways to build on things that might produce better results.
There will be a report issued, right?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, there'll be a plan that'll be issued, but again, along the lines of, for instance, asset management. Let's just talk about one of the key elements of the report, asset management, which we've embarked upon grant opportunities this year. We're developing the performance management measures, so we can report back to the public how the assets are performing and how we're performing when it comes to the elements related to asset management. So that's something we'll report out onto the public, but it would be pretty hard for the public to measure that back to us, so it'll be very difficult. We can report out on those things. When it comes to prioritizing, we've got the road assessment done. So for instance, the paving plan that'll come from that, we'll take that out to the public to let them, to identify how we got to this point when it comes to these things. So it won't be a priority basis based on on somebody saying, well, we would vote to have this local road done in front of a collector or arterial road. So there's a point for consultation, but I think there's some informing or information sharing how we got to this process. And that will happen all the way through road asset management. It will be a continual evolution of community involvement and understanding of what we're doing when we're doing it. Yeah, but there will be continual consultation. Now, the other elements of the strategic priorities that council is embarking upon, I think that will be important for council to speak to that in the committee of the whole meeting when they do introduce the report and we introduce it to staff. introduce some of the values, and the council will be able to elaborate on basically one-on-one sort of their value process in getting there.
Does that answer your question? Councilor Butler?
I was just gonna reiterate pretty much the same thing that the CAO had said, that once the draft comes back and it comes to a committee of the whole meeting, I would love to have public input to say, yeah, that's what we were telling you, or where did that come from? I don't remember anybody wanting that. So at that point, hopefully we could have some collaboration before we go to the final phase of it.
The gentleman in the back.
I just wanted to ask, the final phase, there is the strategic planning process has to come to a completion at some point because it's a prerequisite for something else down the road, isn't it not? So this can't go on forever, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mr. Mayor, one of the things that the strategic plan does for the council sets their strategic priorities, that fits about 30%, 25 to 30% of our total operational expectation. The rest of the operational expectations are legislative and mandatory based on the services that we provide. So they're operational in nature. Council picks the strategic priorities, and what we do is I report back on that to council, so I have a measuring stick for council to achieve their goals. Because when council's reaching the end of their term, and each year they want to know how we're progressing on their strategic priorities. What strategic priorities change when it comes to council making decisions, because we all know that what we think today is going to be our long-term plan. It can change tomorrow with the regulatory agency coming at us. So we will be continuing to develop a strategic plan, but it kind of ends at that point, but it still is reported on and still a measuring stick. So once council's made their decision on it, it allows council then to move through, and we set the budget accordingly to address their strategic priorities. So when it comes to that portion of the budget, like I said, it's about 20 to 30% of our budget is or our planning is the council strategic priorities. And then staff moves off and aligns our business plans to meet the strategic priorities of council, and that's our measuring stick for performance.
Lady in the second row.
Hi. First, just for clarification, about which years this is the strategic plan for, till what year. And the second thing is to have the proper feedback. Usually when there's something on the agenda, the people only know just a little before the weekend, before the meeting. If this is going to be at the next committee of the whole meeting, can the public be let know earlier, like in the papers, so they know this is coming? It's significant, it affects the community for a number of years, so they know in advance which meeting it's at, and they feel like they were fully informed and had their chance to listen and hear what it is and provide feedback. So those two things.
Right, that's Mr. Allen.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. So when it comes to this process, I think there's some responsibility for the public to engage themselves to follow as we're developing this process. It's been in front of council through the open house. We've been explaining the process. The information is on the website. When we have the agendas for us to advertise this it's part of the council agenda, special advertising for it. It is the 3-year or the 4-year term of council. So it's the council priorities that the council that's been elected, the priorities that they set based on their platforms that they ran on in the election process. So it's kind of what they have seen. When council moves forward to the public with this, for us to specially advertise, if we can identify that as a key item on the agenda in italics or something to that effect. But when we develop the agenda, remember this is a 2-week process. We're already working on the next agenda right now as staff, and in order for us to achieve the staff timelines, for managers to get their reports in and consultants to get their reports into us, to achieve the timelines, we actually have the deadline of next Wednesday, and then I have to review all the reports, by Friday. I have to review all the reports on Friday. Then they go into the corporate services to assemble the agenda, which is a big undertaking for the organization. So then we have to get it ready for council, for the mayor to approve, and the mayor goes through and he adjusts the order if he sees fit that something is a bit more of a priority, and then it comes back to go to the public for printing. So it's a big undertaking. There's many steps involved. So for us to advertise, maybe we can start today on our website that this will be on the on the council agenda at the next meeting. But it is there is some responsibility and onus amongst the public to engage here and follow it online and follow the council agendas.
Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. In my experience, the strategic plan belongs to those who met and developed it. And prior to council having done that, we did consult with the public on the 25th of March for input. And I would not support changing the strategic plan with the exception of some tweaks, you know, as to what the consultant may or may not have understood. So I guess speaking to Ms. Cook and Ms. Seminoff, there isn't going to be an opportunity to change that. There's not. I mean, you can comment on it, but I would not support any changes to the plan that was developed by the council.
Gentleman in the front.
Yeah, Hamilton. Anyway, I want to say, Mr. Mayor, that I thought this was a great idea. There's 10 pages of suggestions from the public that came out, and I think it's wonderful. I went through the whole thing and I looked at the little happy faces where I liked it, question marks and so on. And I saw a lot of good ideas here. And what my question is, does the council read this? Does the council actually do the same thing and go through and make these, like as I did? Does every council member, is it a mandatory concept, or is it just something so the public can say, well, I got my say? Do you actually listen to what the people say? Okay.
I would find that as a kind of a derogatory statement.
Okay, well, let me just give you one thing here. What else is important to you? There was this multi-agency accommodation project, the MAAP and Habitat Restore. For them, there was 6 comments, which were pretty good for that, and 2 against. And yet it was thrown out. So that's what I'm thinking. Is there any point in doing this? Or as Councillor Chris is saying, you won't listen to the people anyway. You're going to go ahead with what you're going to do.
First and foremost, the MAPS project was not thrown out. We took a step back to look at it to get it right. If you remember at the meeting, there's a difference between the two. You're making a statement that we threw it out.
Okay, let me reword that. Because it was cancelled, then the grant was cancelled, so therefore the habitat is pulled up. As a chess player, I knew that would happen. And they're gone, and now...
That was by their choice, not by ours.
Because they haven't got the grant. And now the whispers of, oh, I've got to re-negotiate for the lease, and all that's got to come up again. Is that true?
Yes, and we're still involved in, we're not backing out.
Okay.
Thank you.
I noticed that too, that there was 6 in support, but if you look through the entire, read through all of the entire 10 pages, you'll notice that there are some comments in there that should have gone into that, under that proposal, that said, keep the riverfront open for community use, but it refers to the riverfront use. But it's referred to in a number of different areas throughout the report. It just didn't get put in under maps because it didn't specifically say maps, but it referred to the riverfront use. So you'll find it in other areas of that report of people that did not want to see that go through.
And of course, if everything was written in, you'd probably be looking at a 100-page report, which you probably wouldn't read then. Councillor Butler.
So the process for this, as far as I understand it, is when we had our strategic planning session, we identified general areas. We didn't get specific on things. And it's been sent back to staff now to fill in those specifics, which will then come back to council, and I'll be looking at carefully to make sure that those specifics are actually things that council wants, that do fit with what we initially put forward in our general broad interpretation. And also that some of those specifics, I think, need to include what the public has suggested to us in this report.
Thank you.
Lady in the second row.
My name is Karen Bond. I didn't consider Mr. Hamilton's remarks derogatory. Many people are wondering if city council and city government are listening, because we've been asking for months and months and months to have city hall meetings and city government meetings in a location where everybody can fit and people don't have to wait outside for hours to get inside. That's not a free and democratic society.
Thank you.
Comment, yeah.
Any other questions or concerns? Lady in the second.
It was just brought up about the space issue. It's been happening many times that there are people who wanted to participate in these meetings who were left out. Is the council still considering a way to include the people?
So, Mr. Mayor, I think that we're talking about a separate item. I think we have to focus on this report for
Yes.
now, and then we can move on to some.
So are there any other questions on the actual report? We will deal with your questions. So for the motion that's on the table, all in favor? So carried. Our next report, again from Corporate Services, it's the proposed council technology allowance policy.
Mr. Mayor, and do you want me to go through that, or do you already prepared?
I'm gonna set.
I can speak.
Oh, please do.
So your worship, this is something that is kind of getting us up at the times. In the past, of course, members of the council who have gone into to be elected usually end up with somebody else's old hardware, and it may not be something that they're really finding compatible with how they like to use their computers. So staff has put this policy for council consideration to have that yearly allowance of $500. So instead of that, they would have their own laptop or pad or whatever they would like that they're choosing, as long as it complies with the city's hardware. And so it's just something for council's consideration if they would like to look at something like that and help. It allows council to have something maybe a bit more updated, and technology changes every year, so you know they have that choice.
Just another point, Mr. Mayor, is that it fits in with our asset management policy with not acquiring more assets. The councilors would own their own computers and bring them to work with them. So it reduces the amount of computers that we own.
So may I have a motion to receive the report? Councilor Thompson. Councilor Hammett. Discussion debate. Councilor Thompson.
So as I read the report and the recommendation, it's that it would be over the 4-year period, $2,000 at $500 per year, so that the funds can be applied to a computer that would meet, for instance, if it were me, my personal needs. But it would be my responsibility in future with the additional allowance to purchase the upgrades. And if my needs for a computer were in excess of the $500 allowance, then it would be my responsibility to top that up to whatever it was that I wanted. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the intent of that is the gist of it, but we'll still have our compatible software that we'll provide through the city while the councils are in place. So you should not need to be able to have to purchase software to work for the city. The city, with our IT department, will place the software on your computer, maintain that for you. If there's a problem with the software, we would look after that piece. During the time, once the election, if there's an election you decided to not to run, you would take your computer with you, and we would remove the software pieces from there.
In other words, just the hardware.
Just the hardware.
Councilor Shagan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, you know what, I think this is a great idea. Ultimately, it's going to be the exact same cost. It just means that we don't have to have this in our inventory. Of course, spending the $2,000 to purchase these computers regardless. Yeah, it just makes it so we don't have to amortize it. When it comes to any kind of bugs or patches or fixes that are necessary on the computer, the city's IT department will take care of it. We won't have to go and find a secondary private business. Okay. But yeah, no, I fully support this, and the recommendation to receive. Can we also have a friendly amendment to refer this to May 25th, 2015 regular meeting?
All the motion should read I was going to read all the motion again.
Okay.
So the actual motion is to receive the report and refer policy May 25th at the regular meeting for council. So if there is no other questions.
So upon taking office, the council member would get a $500 allowance towards a computer. But that's not going to purchase you a computer right off the bat. You'd have to invest some of your own money initially. And then you'd get paid back over a 4-year period. But up front, there would be a cost for that council member.
Generally, Mr. Mayor, the people do have their own computer that they usually bring in. Most of the people on council have brought in their own phones or their own computer. If there was a situation, that the council member was not in a position to have a computer, then maybe we could make another further amendment to that policy to allow them to have one of the older computers until such time they were able to get up to speed with that. But I think that in today's age of technology, that people do have that we didn't consider that aspect of somebody who wouldn't have a computer.
Councilor Budd.
It says in the statement here, each member of council is responsible for the operation and care of their own device. It's the responsibility of each council member to ensure that all security protocols normally used in the management of corporate data on conventional storage infrastructure are applied here. So the cost of maintaining this, we would be paying to the IT department, because as I'm aware, no outside, my computer tech would not work on a city computer because of the sensitivity of the information stored on here. So it would only be going to the city's IT person to work on, and then we would pay them for that.
No, you would not be, there would be no cost for you as a council member. There would be no cost for you to maintain the software that we provide for your stuff. Anything personal that you do on that is yours. We would only be looking at access to first class or the security components that are related to securing the computer from somebody accessing into your personal information related to the city stuff. So when it comes to council, everything you do as a council member that's on that computer is obtainable by the public. So that has to be protected under the what do you call that? The software for the antivirus software and those types of things.
So based on the advice of our CAO, I'd like to offer an amendment to this that should a new council member not be able to provide a computer upon the receipt of the $500 allowance, that they be allowed to use an old city computer until such time as they are able to secure their own personal computer.
If I could, just before we go into that. The city does have a, Roxanne, do we still have the purchasing for when I remember many years ago, there was a policy that had the ability for somebody to purchase a computer through the organization, and they could, through the policy, and that it would be taken off their pay. Do we still have that policy? No, okay. Okay, so.
So do I have a second to that amendment? Councilor Thompson. Do we want to have a discussion on the amendment?
Just discussion. Just further to that, I just don't think it's fair that a new council member coming in should be expected to provide their own personal computer. There's a lot of sensitive information stored on personal computers, and with the issues we're having with spyware technology these days, as was shown in Saanich with Mr. Atwell having his work computer spied on, I think it's just security for the council member, knowing that their personal work can be kept separate from their city work, and expecting them to provide their own laptop or their own personal cell phone really compromises their security. So I just think it's important that the city, these old laptops, they work fine for the purposes that I need them for, and a new council member coming in, if they don't want to front that money right away to buy a computer for themselves, I just think it's fair that they should be allowed to have one of these old ones.
Councillor Hammond.
Question, through you, Mr. Mayor, to, CAO. Does that mean that if we were past this, we would have to give up these computers? Or are these the ones that the city wants to get rid of so that they don't have the assets?
So the plan, Mr. Mayor, is that once we adopt the policy, the council members would then be expected to use their own computers if they so choose. We could put an amendment to the policy that the city could still provide the old computers, but what we're trying to do is maintain our asset management policy that council has adopted that reduces our inventory. So what we're trying to do is reduce that. But if it's important for council to have these old computers available, it's just we have to go through and amortize and replace computers. So as we're looking at doing that, it becomes another 7 computers that we have to replace. That being said, it doesn't take the power away from council to say that we would like to have the opportunity to opt in or opt out of the program. And that will just save everybody any further discussion. You can just simply have that as your option. So if you decide that you wanted to keep the computer and use the one that the city provides, that's an option. But for the council member that says, I'm really happy with my Mac and I want to use this, I have an opportunity now and this is how I'd like to do it. So it just provides options for council members.
Councillor Hammond.
Would we be able to use that $500 to purchase or put towards the purchase of the computers that we're now using? And purchase it from the city?
I'd have to look into that because our asset disposal policy is such that it allows everybody to have access to it. So when the city is disposing of an asset, it has to be done through a sealed bid process. So council's policy on that is that any asset that the council is disposing of, it is done through sealed bids that are submitted to the corporate officer. So we'd have to amend that policy to get us through that.
Councillor Butler and then Councillor Thompson. Councillor.
So the cost of transferring all the information that I now have on this computer onto a new computer, would that be borne by the city or would I be responsible for that cost?
Staff first.
Mr. Mayor, the amount of stuff to put that into a file onto an empty USB stick, we could loan a USB stick for somebody to slide the information onto the USB and then transfer it into the other computer. That is a relatively simple undertaking. But it is, I mean, it just depends. I mean, technology, I guess it depends on the person's comfortableness with the technology. So if it was a situation where the person felt uncomfortable, we would obviously work to assist council to get their information transferred.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our CAO. So if a councillor opted out, if that's part of the policy, they would not receive the $500 annual allowance. Thank you.
Councillor Rashagan and Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To me, it only makes sense, like I said before, this policy, by holding on to 700 computers, we still have to amortize those, and we're not solving any problem. In fact, we're creating the whole set of new problems. So I'll have to speak against this amended motion, well, the amendment.
Councillor Hammond.
Once these become personal computers and they're not returned to the city, once a councillor has left their seat, how do you guarantee or ensure that the information that's in that computer and on that software is gone?
Good point. The one thing we can't guarantee that today. We can't guarantee that the information isn't taken off of the councillor's computer today and transferred around. The one thing that council works under the oath of office that they took, they are expected to do that and carry out those duties once they've left office, and they're legally responsible for that. So if a council member does leak that information or pass that information on, they are liable for that. So it's a good faith, but there is law that protects the city from that and the corporation. So the councillor person is responsible for their actions.
Councillor Thompson.
But if at the end of the term or somebody was not reelected, the computer could be given to the IT tech, the city's IT tech, and have all of that information removed. Thank you.
Could it be existing?
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a good point that Councillor Hammett brought up. I wasn't aware of the fact that we were actually going to be giving up these computers right away. So I'd like to remove my amendment from the table. I don't think it's covering enough, actually. And as Mr. Allen suggested also, I think an opt-out option would be more prudent at this time, so that those council members that do want to keep this for their term can opt out. And then as the next election comes up, new council members could opt into it. It'll be a transitional phase perhaps. So I would remove my amendment from the table and propose an opt-out clause as an amendment to this motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Richey, discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no problem with that. However, we're discussing this motion as if we're making a decision on it today. At this point, all we're doing is we're receiving it and moving it forward to another meeting, at which point then we could start, switching things up and changing the details of it. But right now, we're really just referring it, pushing it forward, and we're discussing it as if we're actually making a decision, a firm decision on it right now.
So I would suggest we move on.
I would.
And unless there's any, you had a question, is it pertinent to anything?
No, we're not making a decision today.
So again, so the motion is on the table and to refer it to May 25th.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. I did have a motion on the table just to amend this motion to include an
I
opt-out clause.
apologize.
So as we push it forward to that
All in-
regular meeting, it will.
All in favor of the amended motion that we refer it to the May 25th? So carried.
And then the main motion.
And now, all in favor of the main motion to refer it? So carried. On our reports and discussions, our manager of operations will be presenting the Universal Water Meter Program. Sit down, so I'm walking every Can I just make a suggestion to the council to have this presentation and wait till all the councilors refer it to it. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it would be prudent to defer or refer this to the next meeting where all of council will be in attendance.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as much as this has been advertised to the public and we have a full room here of people that have showed up to hear this presentation, I don't think it's fair to those members of the public that have taken the time out of their work schedules to come down today to hear this. I think we're just receiving it for information today. It's something that is online. Other councilors can watch this online when they miss a meeting. It's not like they're going to be missing the presentation. And we're not voting on anything here today. We're just getting an update as to what's happening with this program. We've been waiting for this presentation for quite a while, and I think it's good that, like Councilor Beshagan said, that we move forward and get this dealt with. So it'll give us time to mull this over, and other council members as well, so that next time it comes back, we'll be better informed to deal with it.
Just a brief correction, the recommendation is not to receive it for information, it's to choose one of the options and direct staff to proceed accordingly. But if you wish to make a motion, send it back to staff for more information.
We have a motion, and by all means, and I've said this before, we refer a motion you cannot discuss. It has to go straight to the vote.
So then all in favor of that motion? All opposed? Motion is carried.
Sorry.
We will now move on to our proposed bylaws.
There's some questions or comments. Can we make a question or comment?
You may direct your questions at the end.
Okay.
There's only one more discussion because the motion has already been carried. Our manager of operations, in regards to the 2015 bylaw, electrical utility regulatory bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship, Your Council. I'm here to request that the committee of the whole recommend to council to give the first three readings to bylaw 2015 electrical utility regulatory bylaw to refer to the May 25th, 2015 regular meeting of council. The city currently sets up the electrical accounts in the name of the owner of the property. As per our current bylaw, any unpaid balances at the year end are transferred to the owner's property taxes. It has been past practice of the city not to disconnect overdue utility accounts as they are transferred to the taxes. There's been several landlords in the city that have requested to have the electrical disconnected for their rental properties as their tenants are not paying the bills. So under the community charter, section 18 states that municipality may by law establish circumstances in which it may discontinue a utility service. However, this bylaw must include provisions for reasonable notice and also have provision for persons affected to have the opportunity to come before council. So the current water and sewer bylaws have these provisions, but the electrical bylaw currently does not. So in general, it's a housekeeping item, and we'd like to standardize the electrical bylaw with the current water and sewer bylaws so that we have some continuity or consistency. Financially, it won't have an impact to the city as currently they are transferred to the property taxes. Policy, I can speak to that, just with the community charter and the stipulations around doing that. You must provide reasonable notice and a provision for the persons affected to have the opportunity to make representations to council. So there was some attachments there of the current bylaw and the amendments, and there's a change log of some of the wording that was changed, just in keeping consistent and allowing for disconnects with the electrical utility. So the recommendation is the council give the first three readings to the bylaw 2015, and for the electrical utility regulatory bylaw to refer to the May 25th, 2015 regular meeting of council.
I'll make the motion. Mr. Verschagen, second. Councilor Thompson. Questions? Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any problems with the suggested changes to the bylaw. I think it's good that landlords do have that option with their tenants. The issue that I have with this bylaw is it was originally passed January 26th, the regular council meeting, and the minutes to that meeting were adopted February 10th. At the January 26th meeting, council approved an amendment to this bylaw to include provisions for commercial photovoltaic services. And as far as I can understand, in this bylaw 215 that we're passing here, that option has been removed. It's gone back to its original form. So am I misreading that? Right, yeah, it's at section 11 there. And if you scroll down to the previous bylaw that we passed in January, that wording in section 11 was to read photovoltaic services rather than residential photovoltaic. And in section 11.3, there was a provision put in for commercial. We have a copy of the original bylaw at the bottom of our agenda here, and you can see that it's different.
Sure. Mr. Mayor. Yes. If I could, so in respect to that, that was a good point made by the councillor. This is where we're at the committee of the whole process for the bylaw reading. So simply before it comes to council, the points have been raised, and when it comes to council, those adjustments will be made.
I think this is a great bylaw that gives the landlords a little bit of power as far as not incurring excess bills from their tenants. Just in the policy legislation, it says, however, the bylaw must include provision for reasonable notice and a provision for the persons affected to have an opportunity to make representations to council. So I'm just wondering which party is affected, the landlord or the tenant, because both are going to be affected.
Yes, that's correct. So both will be.
So both parties.
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could, the Residential Tenancy Act will also come into play on this. We won't be, the city is going to be in a position now where, like for instance, a landlord accrues a $20,000 electrical bill from a tenant. To give proper notice under the Residential Tenancy Act, that will prevail. Even if council makes a decision, it'll still fall under the Residential Tenancy Act to make sure that's been complied with. So there is going to be a potential loss of, doesn't matter how we do this, either the owner of the property, he or she is getting stuck with tenants that are abusing the system and paying. And what we're suggesting here too in the future is maybe having council have a small reserve set aside for those situations that do transpire, for council to be able to write off certain costs when they feel as though it's appropriate. Because there has been some people in the community that have opened businesses that have been leaving a trail of massive electrical bills with the landlords. And it's just an incredible burden to be putting onto a landlord that is just simply trying to accommodate a new business, trying to work in that respect. And it leaves it kind of in a real transitional period. And we have some tenants in town right now that have been in 3 different locations and that have left a trail of thousands of dollars in bills.
Councilor Hammond.
I agree, and that's why I brought this forward a few months ago in the first place, because we do have a commercial tenant in town that's in 3 locations in as many years that's left a trail of hydro bills behind them. But at the same time, I think the city can't be responsible. I think the landlords have to do their due diligence, and checking references or in some residential cases, perhaps having to take a hydro deposit as well as a damage deposit until they can confirm that they've got a responsible tenant in place. But as far as the commercial tenancy is concerned, if that person's been in business in town and they've been evicted, and then they go to another location and they've been evicted, I think the landlords need to do their due diligence, and the city can't be bailing them out in that case. I think the city's doing their best in this case by allowing the landlord to request a disconnection so that they don't incur any more bills. But I think initially, before they sign a tenancy agreement with a landlord, they need to check references.
Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm of 2 minds with respect to this, and my preferred recommendation would be that the landlords include the cost of utilities in their monthly rent, or conversely have the utility bill sent to them, and then they can collect the utility payment from their tenant. I can support having a contingency allowance so that the city would be writing off unpaid utilities because a tenant refused or didn't pay their utility bill. There is under the charter or the act the ability to transfer unpaid utilities to property tax arrears, and that's the way I would prefer to see it, and not become involved in doing a landlord's business.
Okay. So we have a motion to recommend this first 3 reading to be referred to the May 25th, 2015 regular meeting of council. Yeah, I have a motion for that.
We already have.
We have a motion. Yeah. Okay, so all in favor? So carried. Motion is being carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to question period from the public. Maybe in a second row.
So this is regarding amending the electrical bylaw. I had shared a letter with Mayor and yourself and council about my interactions with a city worker in Penticton, And there's 4 municipalities that have their own electrical utilities. Grand Forks is one of them, Penticton is one of them as well. And they're wireless, and they're opting out of wireless is significantly less costly than ours, about $60 difference for a meter, which seems like it's probably the same one. And we're looking at charging for someone to get out of their vehicle and walk to the house to read, approximately $15. There they charge, actually it's $25 here. And there they charge, or is it, no, 15, that's the water meters is 25. There they charge 11. So it was brought to our attention when we brought this to the public that we could ask council to ask staff to research, is it possible to make it more affordable? The wireless emissions are still classified as a 2B possible carcinogen. They were initially classified in 2011. The World Health Organization hasn't changed that classification. And for some residents, they might wish to opt out. And I'm hoping we wouldn't make it too difficult for them and make it very fair and charge them a fair price. So I'm asking council, through you, Mr. Mayor, if they would please consider asking staff to check this out to see if it can be more affordable to get that non-emitting meter and have manual reads.
Totally noted. Thank you for your comment. Councillor Hammond?
I'm not aware that the city's installing any new electrical meters at this time. Is that true?
I could answer, but my understanding is that starting last year, the city has been replacing some that appear to have different emissions, but they're still the same label as the type. But this is something they're required to do under Measurement Canada. And the old meters that they took, they're approximately 10 years old, they send them for testing to check their accuracy. So the city is having their meters checked to see how well they're measuring. So there are replacements going on. My meter was changed unexpectedly, and this was a concern for me. And I know there's other residents who haven't come yet, but are planning to come to council in the future. But I'm speaking on behalf of a number of people who would like to check that it's a fair price and how the price is calculated, and to make it affordable, to make this healthier option if there are issues in the home.
Sure. So when we're talking about how do we get to the cost of this, it relates back to the cost of operation, the cost of keeping the lights on, the cost of the operations for the staff, the cost of the vehicles. All those factor into it. The opportunity for a different meter to be installed in our system, as long as it's compatible and our electrical engineer makes a recommendation that we can make it work, that shouldn't be a challenge. If what we don't want to do is start inventorying different meters that cost, different applications that cost us the extra cost when it comes to software or parts or training with our staff. So we want to make sure we try to generalize it. But if we have a situation where a customer is adamantly, from a health perspective, cannot have this meter on their home, we would definitely want to explore that and understand that a little bit better. The other piece to it, the cost of the read. The cost of the read is based, like I said, based on the actual operating costs. And these are the things you wouldn't necessarily see, right? Council is part of those costs. Everything, the building that you're sitting in right now forms part of that cost. All the costs that we have related across the organization have to be amortized and placed into that. We can't just pull these pieces out and say, well, this is fictitious, this will happen. So we have to take that across the board. So when we look at the read costs, depending on the number of reads that we do manually, that would be, how much time does that take along with the operator and the vehicle and that. So we have to measure that out. And I believe that we've already done that. For us to do another undertaking of that would be an exhaustion of staff time. But I think it's something that we can explore as part of our electrical rates on maybe every 3 years or 2 years, something along those lines. Because I think what the seminar, what you're talking about is something that if we have 5 people doing it, we charge $50, and it takes one of the guys an hour and a half to do the reads. Well, there's coffee breaks, there's other things you have to keep in mind here when you do this during the day. We're not just sitting there waiting to come out and do reads at that moment. What's happening is there's other things we have to factor into that. So if the reads don't measure up to the actual costs, then the city is subsidizing those costs from another area.
Go ahead.
My understanding with our reading of meters, all the meters, is that the vehicles are driving by anyways, so you would stop the vehicle, get out of the car from in front of the home, walk to the home, read it, and go back into your vehicle. So I'm a little bit confused about that part. And we were concerned because it's a significant price difference to get this different meter, about $60 some compared to Penticton. It seems very strange, such a huge price difference between the two municipalities. Just wishing for it to be checked out.
You must remember that we're a small municipality. Bigger municipalities have a bigger buying power. Hopefully that may be.
No interest in checking though.
That's always being pursued every day. To the business.
My name is Sharon Campbell. If we are considering costs and the constant fact of having employees and all the paying them out and the cost of getting the service to the people, then most of the people that didn't opted out of the water meter for health reasons are opting out of this other electrical meter as well. So why not have that, instead of being charged twice for a reading, do the same reading at the same home at the same time, covering the cost of both of the readings with one visit. As well as, I would like to know why the city of Grand Forks, being the size that it is, opposed to a city of Trail size, why do we have double the amount of city employees that Trail has?
Mr. Mayor, so the two different departments are distinctly different. So when we talk about electrical department, they read the electrical meters and they read from a different meter reading device.
But is it not run by the same city?
So if I could answer the first question.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, the devices are read and the electrical meters are read every 2 months because the residents prefer to have lower bills rather than doing it quarterly. So there's an additional cost for the organization by issuing the bills every 2 months. So the water bills are a flat rate right now. The water department reads the commercial and industrial. I believe they read them monthly. The two different departments, there's union agreements. So the union employees, they don't cross each other's lines when it comes to doing those things. So there's other things we have to consider. When it comes to us exploring efficiencies, we're always doing that. So once a water rates committee has sat and they've determined, make some recommendations to council as we evolve over the next several months and year, we'll better understand how we're going to do that. The next piece is with the city of Trail and the city of Grand Forks. Like you said, one of the people in the audience said, well, the city of Grand Forks has electrical utility. We're one of 5 municipalities in British Columbia that have that utility. So in order for us to run an electrical utility, which is a multi-million-dollar corporation in itself, you require staff. We're billing every 2 months. So we have to have somebody out there processing those bills, getting those bills out. We have to have an electrical team. So that in itself is probably close to about 5 people or more. And part of the managerial expectations go there. So then we look at the other departments that we have. Our municipality is not the same as Trails. We have a small sewage treatment plant where they might have a larger sewage treatment facility. Our water distribution system is a little bit smaller. We actually have a complement of employees that is suited to our needs right now, and we're constantly managing that. We're always looking for efficiencies, and we've just reported to council some other efficiencies that we've incorporated. And as we move along with technology and other changes in our organization, there will be further changes to our team as we evolve in time. But to compare us to Trail is comparing apples to oranges. Trail is a completely different machine, depending on the number of roads that they have, depending on the length of the parks that they have, at the fire department, all the different things that they offer there. So when you actually get down to the square meters of parks, the lengths of roads, the types of roads, the type of services that we offer in a community are distinctly different across the line. Not all communities are the same. So, and this is an age-old question. Why can you have this? They might bring in an army of 42 students every summer. And their collective agreement allows for that, when our collective agreement actually speaks to something totally different. So when we're doing these things, we have to be cognizant of that. So there's so many factors, and I'd like to be able to tell you that there's a real simple, easy answer to it, but I can just tell you that we are running our municipality in a very efficient manner when it comes to our staffing levels. We're constantly reviewing that. We're now moving towards performance management of that when it comes to measuring and reporting back to the public. Over the next couple of years, we should be able to report to council the levels of our performance based on the life of our assets, so we can actually measure and show you how we're doing. Because right today, you can walk outside and you can see how beautiful it is, with the lines being painted and everything being organized, that it looks like we're performing at a very high level. But I can actually, what I want to be able to bring forward to council is measuring quantified data that'll show how we're performing. So you'll be able to see that in the very near future. So then your question will be very easily answered.
Okay, and sorry, I have another question. So when I get my water bill and it states that I've used $13.24 worth of water, I have a sewer charge of $11.24. Yet if you add those two prices onto all of the administration fees and the capital provincial gains tax, it comes to $170 in a 2-month period. Is that saying that the water that I've used in that amount is the $13.24? Because that's taken off of a read off of my house.
I can't speak to the breakdown of the billing. I could put, what I can tell you is,
well, it's usage.
In past years, rather than you getting a water bill, the communities asked for the bill to be broken down into all the different aspects so they can see all those elements.
Yes.
The finance department, Ms. Shepherd, would be able to speak to a little bit more of those details. If you'd like to set up an appointment to ask her the question, she'd be better suited to answer that for you. So.
And I want to know if the city is prepared to take in all of the health risks of putting in, I know that you've now amended the thing so that you guys are responsible if something goes wrong with the water meter, but there are certain residents in this community that cannot have those things in their home because of their health risks involved with what they already have. Now, does that mean that in order for them to be taken into consideration with not having a water meter put on their home, that they need to submit all of those health risks to the city?
So, Mr. Mayor, in respect to that question, the city has already said during some time ago that when a resident has such a concern when it comes to that, I think it'd be an opportunity for them to come and talk to council about that. When we're talking about the electrical meters, I mean, in order for you to have electricity in your home, you have to have an electrical meter on there, which is the meter that you have to get the power to your home. If you're opting out of the electrical utility and you don't want to have the water meter in your home, there is the digital touchpad read that doesn't have the emissions. So a customer can be offered that as a solution. If they're adamantly against having a water meter in their home, they can opt to the paying a version of that to have a meter kit installed at their property line, which can be extensive in cost. But the option to have the one in the home, the touchpad is the option to not have any of the potential effects of the emissions that are sent from the meter.
Okay, thank you.
Lady in the back.
In terms of efficiencies, a lot of people would like to know why there's a 30-page response from a private corporation named Urban Systems with which the CAO has some undisclosed financial connection, when the city residents in and around Grand Forks advised City Council through public letters posted in the Gazette that we are collecting letters, comments, questions, research data, and suggestions for the opt-out program, which include far more than what has been put a couple of days ago on a 200-page agenda item. People are also asking for full disclosure as to the actual basis, facts and figures from both Ms. Hammett and Mr. Allen as to what the allegations are that certain people who have spoken out against water meters in their current situation have been, quote, bullying, threatening, intimidating, and harassing, unquote, Mr. Allen and his family, so he felt so unsafe he left, got 191,000
Excuse me, point of order. You
and came back.
you're crossing over on two different subjects.
All right, I will try and focus my remarks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My point is we are still taking signatures. We are still collecting data because of the new information, including a petition for a forensic audit of city actions regarding the CAO. People will be
Again.
sending in letters until May
Mr. Mayor,
15th.
Can we end this conversation?
Again, can we refrain from these kind of discussions?
If you can tell me what I'm saying wrong, Mr. Mayor, I'd appreciate it. I'm trying to
Mr.
let
Mayor,
people
I would
know
like to
that
file
we
a
are.
motion to adjourn this meeting.
Yes.
Just a minute here.
Wait a
I'm
minute,
sorry.
can't people speak? You guys
Let's
keep
speak
talking
about
about
personnel
community
issues
dialogue.
in this setting.
Can anybody speak without Doug Allen speaking for them? We're
Yes,
talking
Madam-
about
Madam-
community dialogue.
Madam,
And you
you're
guys
now out
don't
of
want
order.
to hear it, and then you end the meeting.
You are out of order, ma'am. Councillor Thompson.
Ms. Bond, I understand you are a lawyer, and are you acting in that capacity for the people with whom you are speaking about?
Nice try, Ms. Thompson. I have made absolutely clear to everybody I've spoken with, I am not a lawyer in Canada. I have never pretended or said anything that would suggest I am a lawyer in Canada. I've been quite clear about that in all my dealings.
So as an educated person, you would understand that personnel issues are discussed in camera and not in an open public meeting?
Chris Hammond accused people of criminal behavior at a city council meeting. That's what I'm addressing, and I'd like to see facts and figures and where these allegations come from.
I think Mr. Berry had a question. Or a comment?
The gentleman in the front.
Yeah, the gentleman on the front is Frank Treveri. I sent a letter to City Council and CC'd it to you, Mayor Conrad, and CC'd it to all the members of the City Council. I was expecting that letter would end up on an agenda item, either for here at the Committee of the Whole meeting or an agenda item for your regular meeting. I haven't seen that letter appear at all. And this is not the first time. This is the second time that I sent a letter. In this particular case, it's a request, okay?
Was your letter submitted in the proper timelines?
But I don't know what the proper timeline is. I requested in my letter to you that you respond if I'm not following the proper protocol, that you let me know as to what the proper protocol is. So how can I be aware of the proper timeline unless you let me know?
And direct this to staff, has that letter been received?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that letter has been received, and generally the members of the public do not set council's agenda. Council's agenda is the business of the city. When it revolves around personnel issues, it does not get, a member of the public does not get the privilege of submitting an agenda item for an open discussion in the public forum. That is done under Section 90 of the Community Charter and is protected under the Act for that purpose. So it's not even, actually, it cannot even be discussed anymore in this meeting about the personnel issue.
Well, it is not a personnel issue, okay? The request is that you make public the request in my letter, and what I would like to do is to be able to read the letter, so that the letter at least becomes part of the public record. And basically, what I'm requesting from council is that all administrative salaries that are paid for by the taxpayer, just like all the QP salaries, be accessible to the taxpayer. Why should I not have the right to know in detail what the CAO's contract involves, what every other contract, every other administrative contract involves, when I do have the right to take a look and see what you're paying the city workers, the QP workers? That's what I've been asking. I'm not asking to discuss personnel issues. I'm trying to ensure that you as a council look after my tax dollar.
Councilor Hammond.
If I'm correct, I believe that all the city staff wages are posted as public information.
Anything over $100,000.
$75,000 and overall, all of those are
Yeah, posted as public record. Councilor Richard.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all with what Mr. Treberry said there. It is public knowledge, and I think it should be that way for any kind of taxation, for any level, like whether it be education, I believe teachers, administrators, all that information.
And
My
it's
tax dollars
open.
have paid, yeah, that,
And it is
paid
open.
for years.
It's open. And
Yeah.
so I can take a look at the salary, but when I take a look at the press release that deals with the past severance of the CAO, what I'm looking at is terms in there like,
Mr. Trevorrow, you're going into the personnel issue.
no, I'm not going into personnel issues. It's got nothing to do with the issue of personnel.
Councilor Butler.
Just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, with Mr. Trevorrow's comments, personnel issues may be held in camera. They not definitely have to be held in camera. There's only 5 sections of Section 90 that must be held in camera, and personnel is at the discretion of the people speaking. So I think Mr. Trevorrow is perfectly within his rights to discuss what he's choosing to discuss.
In that letter that I sent, I'm not finished yet. In that letter that I sent, right, I'm requesting the details of those particular contracts. All the details, not vague words, right? I'm requesting the details of the contracts, and I should have a right to see the detail of those contracts. They're not personnel issues. Personnel issues is if you decide to fire someone and there are some reasons for firing that particular individual that cannot be disclosed, then those are personnel issues, right? But to take a look at the contracts that my tax dollar is paying for, I should have that right. And it should be in detail, not just the salary, but the benefits and terms of severance.
Yes, with all due respect, you are able to access that under the Freedom of Information.
And so you're gonna put me through that whole process that I have to go through.
As every other individual would have to do.
No, you don't have to do that. You can be an open counsel. You can be an open counsel and voluntarily put that information on your website. Okay? Don't put me through the pains of having to go to Freedom of Information in order to acquire that information. That should be my right as a citizen.
Your concerns have been one of these here. Councilor Hammond.
I remember reading recently, and I believe it was published in the Gazette in a press release, the complete outline of Mr. Allen's current contract, including.
If you allow me to read the letter that I sent to you, right? If you allow me to read the letter I sent to you, I can, or if you would like to read the letter, yeah, if you would read the letter out so that you can see what my concerns really are. And so that the general public
You were
can
looking
see.
for the contract details, and I believe they've been published in the paper in a press release.
No, the details were not published in the press release.
Councilor Thompson.
Mr. Trevorrow, your letter that you requested to be placed on an agenda has been circulated to all council and it has been read. And it will be answered in due course. But I don't think here in this meeting at this time is an appropriate place to have those answers given, because we haven't had an opportunity to thoroughly research and digest and come up with an answer for you. So I ask your indulgence and your patience. Thank you.
Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so that you don't have to go through that trouble, the new contract has been received through Freedom of Information by the member of the public, so it is available to members of the public if you wish to see the new contract. Also, I would encourage council to release all in-camera minutes from that whole process, but I can't do that at an open public meeting. I would have to do that in camera.
The lady in second row.
Sylvia Trepton. I had sent an email to you January 21 requesting information about the insurance liability aspect of the water meters. I sent 3 reminder emails asking for a response. I finally received in the mail on May the 1st a response to that letter, and the response was dated March 17. So it sat on somebody's desk for a month and a half before it was finally sent along to me. I got out my trusty calendar, and lo and behold, it was 14 weeks since the initial request for information. Is this the time lag that we can expect as members of the public for any questions raised?
That's not necessarily the timelines, but unfortunately at this particular time, that's what occurred. And reason behind it, there's no excuse, but it is what it is. My apologies. Gentleman in the back.
This is, I guess it's a bit of a language thing. I wasn't aware that you had jobs where they were just driving by. Could I get one of those jobs? I mean, it's going to pay better than what I have now. You know, like the impression that Donna has, Ms. Samanoff has left is that the cost of reading these meters would be just an extra thing because there'll be people staffers just driving by. And the only place that I can think of where staffers just drive by is if you live on Second. So I'm just curious, do we have staff that just drive around and because they have nothing else going on? I like to drive.
Have a job first.
They're really a technical question.
Well, I'm just trying to point out that she's leaving the impression that this is a no-brainer extra non-cost because they're just driving by, and that's not the case, that's all.
Councilor Butler.
It's my understanding that to read the RF meters, there is a member of staff with a handheld device that drives and they can pick up the readings within a 2-block radius. So they do drive up and down the streets with their handheld device. So to get the manual read ones as they're driving, reading the electronic ones, they can stop, get out, do a manual read, get back in and continue driving and reading the electronic meters. I think that's what she was saying.
Thanks for the clarification.
To the gentleman in the back.
Nigel James, in with your worship. This is, I hope, a non-controversial topic. It concerns the electricity method of ensuring that the payment occurs. I don't know in North America now that pay as you go for electricity meters are available, and that as soon as your money that you enter into the meter beforehand, when it runs out, the lights go out, and therefore they could. And I realise that the electricity is provided by the city as such, which is rather unusual. But perhaps these meters, if they're available, could be either bought or hired or whatever from the city to install in properties.
Thank you. Gentleman in front.
Hamilton. Yeah, just a couple of suggestions. First of all, talking about going back to the non-controversial issue, $500 being applied for purchasing technical apparatus. Would it not be a good thing, perhaps not being a computer geek, I haven't got this right, the chief administrative officer mentioned a stick, you can get a stick that goes in a computer. So why would the city not have the computers, the old computers here, and purchase a stick? You can get them for less than $100 and basically take all the information from that. And I think it's reasonable to expect any adult in this day and age has their own computer. Take it home, plug it into your own computer for security, you take it out and you guard it with your life. It seems to me that would be a relatively inexpensive, Mr. Mayor, way of addressing this issue. So you could carry your stick back and forward and replenish from the computer and go back. That's possible.
Unfortunately, on the stick, it will only store data, it doesn't store programs. The program is installed on the computer, it has to be on the computer. The data can be carried around in a memory stick or a thumb drive.
And the data is the most important thing.
Exactly, but it's just the program, which is the iTech of the city.
Makes it useless.
Okay, that was one thing. Then the other thing, if I may ask, was going to the strict utility bylaw on the concept of cutting off both, because the landlords, I was at a landlord's meeting, I was asked to come. And they were all concerned about many things, but one of the things is, the running away of the, what's it called, tenant, and leaving him with the big bills. One of the solutions discussed was to cut off someone who is not paying their bill. I would put into that a suggestion that you would ask, specifically in winter, for example, ask the landlord's permission to do so, because if you cut off some electrical supply in the middle of winter, the landlord could end up with a bunch of frozen pipes, and I think it would be a good idea. Can we shut this off? We're going to do it. And they would say, no, or yes. That's just a suggestion.
Thank you. Councillor Hammond.
I believe the bylaw is worded in such a way that the electricity power would only be cut off at the request of the landlord. So the city would not indiscriminately go and cut off the landlord. It would have to be a request from the landlord.
Right on. Amen.
Otherwise, the city would be harboring a liability. In this case, the landlord does once he requests.
One last question. There was one lady who didn't pay, I think she had her own house and she was cut off, and I know she was in, anyway, she had frozen pipes and this, that, and the other. Is there any kind of, for the poor, any kind of provision so that there's some other possibility that he's cutting them off in the dead of winter?
Mr. Mayor, the opportunity to be heard before council, just like the bylaw says, they give the opportunity to be heard by council. So I don't know if that answers the question, if it creates a discrepancy between the rich and the poor, but they get the opportunity to be heard by council.
I'm just gonna change the whole tone of it here. I got a letter from the city asking if I approved of the variance in my neighborhood of Mr. Copan's. And it didn't come on to the agenda, of course, because I didn't go to City Hall or whatever. But anyway, I would just like to say, he's trying to improve our neighborhood by putting this building up. It's a movable building, and it's my fence that the variance is going to be on, and I approve wholly.
I believe this issue is on the evening meeting.
Oh, is it the evening? I'm sorry.
And a public meeting or something.
It was a no. I was told I could hear.
No public hearing is for lot 64.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, I'm
We already
sorry.
went through this. Yes.
It's at the regular meeting this
I
evening.
don't read very well.
Well, we appreciate it.
You don't have to apologize. No public hearing, and there's a regular meeting itself. Gentleman in the front.
Yes, again, the gentleman in the front is Mr. Treveri, Frank Treveri, not Mr. Frank. I still would like some sort of answer as to how my letter will appear as part of the public record. I sent a letter to City Council. I would like it to be part of the public record.
It is part of the public record, as I've noted before.
Well,
It's been received.
how does the public have access to that letter if it doesn't appear on the agenda, and if how can it be part of the public record if you determine that the letter is refers to personnel issues and therefore is has to be discussed in camera? How can the general public read the letter? Is the only way that I'm going to get it to be part of the public record is to put it in the paper? Pay to put the whole letter in the paper?
That would be one suggestion.
You think that's a great response from the mayor, from a mayor who campaigned that he was going to be open to the public, that you suggest that I go through the expense of putting a letter in the newspaper?
Please.
I'm not being accusatory. I'm stating a fact.
Councillor Butler.
Your letter was included in our weekly information summary. Council receives a weekly information summary each week, and it's available to some members of staff as well. I understand that you want it to be available to the rest of the community, and as far as I saw, your letter was in response to an open press release and to information that has been stated at an open council meeting. So since that you're just discussing open information that's available to the public, I have no issue with it being included on the agenda.
Well, obviously someone had issue because it didn't appear.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, when we get the information for council's agenda, it's based off reports from the corporation that are affecting the decisions that council is making. So council is making decisions on behalf of the corporation. The opinion coming in from a member of the public or a request is done through a different channel. It's not done through this process. The process that you're asking for, if you want the information like you suggested, the mechanism of the freedom of information process is the best way to go. But respecting the fact that you see that as being cumbersome, the information is available always to the public. There is no sense, council's not hiding anything in respect to that. When you talk about the union wages and those types of things, Schedule A is available for the collective agreement as well. The information is that the staff wages are available and they are on the SOFI reports at the end of each year. So when we get into these details about the union wages and the management wages and the details of the contract, there are components of the contract that are not available for the public, and that relates to the personal issue. They are not available for your consumption. Not ever are they available for your consumption. So I want to make that clear. But the other information is available for your consumption. So upon you wanting to get that information, Mr. Taveri, you can seek it through this process. Give council the opportunity to be able to discuss and figure out how they can better present that to the public. Council's only been in place for what, 6 months now? And this whole process that you're looking for is to be done already. I think you've got to give them a reasonable timeline because they're also trying to catch up on multiple things that they're dealing with here. So I think that there's, in all fairness to council, is give them an opportunity to catch up. And over this time, your point is definitely taken that if they can do something better on the information on the website, then let them discuss that and figure out through staff how we can do that to make that information available to you, because there's no intention of hiding it. Council just wants to make sure they understand the questions we're looking at, and that's what Councillor Thompson said. So today, they'll talk about it a little bit more, and maybe one of them will bring a motion forward in the near future for how we can better demonstrate transparency to the public.
Thank you.
Lady in the back.
Karen Bond, for the record, I also submitted a letter, a statement to the committee of the whole, approximately 3 pages, and stapled to that a copy of my March 29th, 2015 letter to the Gazette editor that was published. I'd like to make sure that that is on city record, the city council's public record, and because it addresses everything that happened in city council meetings, I trust that that will be kept public. Also, Frank, you can send any letters that you want made public to me or to Box 56. We're still gathering letters for the Water Meter Manifesto. Thank you.
Lady in the second row.
4 things, I'm gonna try to go really quickly through them. The first thing was, we were told before at council meetings that it would be efficient to read water meters and electrical meters at the same time when the city staff drive by in their vehicles. So just for clarity on that, that was seen as something efficient that would be happening in the city. And there's in Penticton, when they do that, they do have a price. They charge $13 for having both done at the same time, or $11 for one. The second thing, and if I'm in error on the second thing, please do correct me. But my understanding from the community charter is that the mayor decides what's on the agenda for the meetings. Is that a mistake? You want to correct it right away?
Mayor adjusts the order of things that are on the agenda.
Really? Yeah. I'll take another look. The third thing was a question that I asked earlier that, Mr. Mayor, you said we would speak to later on, and that was about having enough room for the people. Many, many meetings, there's been a number of people excluded from meetings, and the question was asked, does council have a plan to make this accessible to everyone who's interested in attending in the gallery? Because people are being excluded from participating in these meetings.
I believe we've already addressed that once in the past, where it was a suggestion that was being entertained that we would hold it somewhere else if there was a huge amount of public present.
So
we'll have to go back and when this
is there a certain number of people? If there's a certain number of people waiting in the hallway then, or what's the idea?
I could, one of the things, it's interesting, the comments, because I can remember when we first started in 2012, Mr. James would be one of the only attendees, and just not trying to single him out, but and as the interest has grown in the community, it is interesting. So this is a new piece for council to consider, because if council embarks upon renting a space, and they rent the space and they have more seats available, but we also have to have the communication devices available too, because not everybody's going to be able to get a copy of the agenda. We also have to have the ability for transmission through the internet service that we have right now. Staff to be able to take the minutes, the communications devices and plugins for council. So it would be a bigger undertaking. So if council is going to consider that, they're going to have to consider the total cost, Mr. Mayor. So I would just, we've looked at a couple things. I know the school district has a room similar to this, but it's a little bit smaller. When we get into the options, it's how big do you build it? And I guess that's really the question, because there's going to be a significant investment required for us to get there.
Councilor Button.
Bringing Mr. Mayor to the fire chief, he's brought this up before, but I forget. What is the occupancy load for this room, and how many are we sitting at today?
I think 47 is the actual load. And we had set the amount of chairs, including council, staff, everybody, to meet 47. So as soon as the chairs are full, that's it, we're at max.
Mr. Mayor, when you get, could we not have an overflow behind fire chief there and a microphone through? You wouldn't, and even sometimes you have a television camera. But are you allowed to have people out there?
No, that's an exit corridor. You're not allowed to plug the exit corridor.
Because there is a vibrancy. I think it's really healthy. I know we get times when we have strong opinions, but there is a vibrancy that's actually very productive. I think opposing opinions actually shapes through to something, a better result. And there is a vibrancy in listening and watching the personalities and being able to reflect back to the mayor that I think it's positive, and it's not the same. I'm really grateful to Les Johnson. I don't always agree with him, but I am very grateful that he is here, that it is available, but it is not the same as being here and gauging the personalities and being able to say, yeah, I agree with Chris Thompson or whatever, or I don't. So we'll be in another room or.
So you prefer live over memorized?
Oh, live is hugely different.
Let's wrap that up with the community center, which comes back. We don't have one. If we had one, we could use it.
Is there anywhere else with the same equipment?
Do you have any other questions?
Okay, this is the fourth point that I had. There was a meeting here where Mr. Phil Morrow presented an idea regarding handling the water meters, and the council appreciated this interesting idea. And then I had asked council about being open to other ideas, that they were open, and it was brought up that this presentation would be presented about different options that the city staff would bring. And the question I asked was, when does the public bring these other ideas? And we were asked not to submit other ideas till after the presentation of the options. But when I read what was written that was initially scheduled for today, it was asking for council to make a decision. So it was skipping that part of the people, based on that meeting, believed that they were going to also contribute some ideas for consideration by council, and that's what we were told. So I'm wondering what's going to happen there now. I'm hoping we can be treated fairly as a public, that it's clear to us when we have that chance to also present any other ideas besides Mr. Morrow's.
We have actually referred this to another meeting, was on the agenda,
Yeah.
but it is no longer.
Yeah. But the question is, when does the public present their ideas?
We will look into that. Councilor Buck.
Just for clarity to the public, the motion that was made by council that Ms. Semenoff is referring to was that a staff develop a report that would provide different options to try to satisfy the concerns of the residents that may be opposed to the water meter project. Included in this report, Councillor Vershagen would like to see options on how staff will proceed with collecting the data from the residents. So the discussion that went on surrounding that was that there would be many options brought back to council, between 15 or 20, our CAO had said, and that could result in an open house and polling the public. The mayor at that time had also asked that the public be polled. So I understand your concerns.
And that resolution is on February 23rd at the regular meeting on page 3.
And just further to that, Mr. Mayor, I talked to the mayor about this because he asked me the same question this morning, and I said, the idea behind this is to have a committee of the whole open up the discussion, and then have council, if council was to choose, then choose the mechanism that they want to engage the public. Because we don't know how to best engage. If we have an open house, is that timing going to be right? Is it better to be received by letter? Is it, you know, and then that was our discussion this morning. So when we're having this discussion, today, the intention of today's meeting was to talk and put some ideas out there and then get it out to the public. When council was to make a decision on that, yeah, the wording in the resolution, yes, it sounds like it's very direct, but council still controls this. It's not staff. Council still controlling it. So council would have the ability to direct us to now hold, what if they want to have an open house, if they felt as though that was the best mechanism, or solicit requests by letter, or a combination of both. So that's what we've discussed, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Buck.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO, how much did this report from Urban Systems cost the taxpayer?
Mr. Mayor, I think right now it's somewhere between the research and everything in there. I believe it's between $5,000 and $7,000.
Oh, that's
Oh, my goodness.
Lady in the second.
Okay, thank you. I was reading the respectful workplace policy and the city's commitment to having respect also with the citizens. And since we were told that there would be the input, that we have the chance to submit some ideas, I'd really appreciate at some point us receiving clarity of when do you want us to be ready to do that and how.
I would suggest if you have suggestions, put them in writing. So that
You're
we have-
welcome. You're open to letters now on that.
Gentleman in the back.
Nigel James, on the subject of, we're going to make a delegation, I request a delegation to the council when 2 weeks' time, hopefully all councillors will be there. And it's a way I saw that public input could be done efficiently and non-contentiously, etc., in another city where in the south of the USA, where every person just fills in the name for the record keeping to make sure the names are correct, plus the topic. And then they have 3 minutes to say what they've got to say, and after 3 minutes, and then it's up to council to listen, or hopefully they've listened, then to later on in their in the following days, cogitate and think about it and say, hey, that was a good idea, let's think about that and let's see if we can incorporate. Anyway, I plan to do that, and therefore to give you a few more minutes on my time.
Thank you. Councilor Butler.
What Mr. James is referring to sounds to me like a public hearing, which council does hold from time to time, where we just sit back and listen and we don't respond or argue or get involved in any way. We just hear from the public their concerns and what they'd like to have addressed. And I think that's an excellent idea for council to engage the public and to truly listen to the wishes of the public and to try and come to some sort of collective understanding as a community. I think amongst all of us here, we've got some pretty intelligent people that we don't need to be spending thousands of dollars on study after study. We're a community. Let's get together and let's figure this out. It's not going to be something we're all happy with, but I think it can be a win-win for everyone in the end. We're reasonable people.
Public hearings for zoning amendments.
What would you suggest?
Gentlemen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What are we going to do? I guess it's to council and to the chief administrative officer, excuse me. I guess it was 3 different council meetings I attended and I brought up certain points during these meetings and nothing ever happened. So finally, the 4th time I wrote. This was in the middle of March. It was regarding insurance issues and bill, what's it called? 1973, what's it called? Bylaw, thank you. Excuse me, getting old. And bylaw 1973. And the vulnerabilities of both the people and the city because of the mistakes, or rather the way that bylaw was set up. And Mr. Allen agreed that yes, the citizens should not end up owning the meters, but the city should own the meters. That was hunky-dory. That's one point of about 5 that I made there. And still there is a vulnerability. And later on, first of all, I should say, after I sent this letter, and I sent it again, I never once received a written reply, as Mr. James suggested that it would be an idea within 1 or 2 days to receive a reply saying, we have received this letter. It has been sent to the desk of Sasha Bird or whatever. They will be getting back to you. Within a week, you get some kind of a reply dealing with the issues, or saying we don't know how to deal with them, we are going to look into it, or something like that. Something's happening. Anyway, this was in March when I finally, after 3 meetings, I finally sent in March. And in April, I was wondering why I hadn't heard it all. And in the corridor, Mr. Allen mentioned, I said, what's happening with that letter? And Mr. Allen told me that the council was so busy, well, she's fair enough, they're too busy to look into that, but they would be looking into it in May. And at the next meeting, this change was made to build bylaw 1973 to say now the city will own the meters. Okay, so we have to pay that the city owns the meters. But the rest of the issues were not addressed, and they still leave the city and the people vulnerable to underwriters, of which I understood. I studied underwriting. You're in danger. But please, write back and tell me you're addressing the issues, or you're not going to or respond. Is that fair?
It is.
So that will happen? Hallelujah.
Please to let you know that we received it.
Yes.
In writing.
And we will deal with it.
In writing.
Any other questions or concerns? In this case, we have a motion to. Gentleman back.
So quiet.
Yeah, you probably don't want to hear this.
Nope. Would you be willing to identify yourself?
Well, the electricity bills by an owner, when he rents the place to somebody, and they sign a responsibility note that they will be responsible for the electricity, if they don't pay it, then you should not be allowed to go back to the person that owns the building. The whole circumstances should be that they take the person that signed the responsibility for the electricity, take them to court if they have to, whatever, to get the money that is applicable to the city.
I don't know if that's possible because the landlord is the person that's on the taxation roll, but I will direct this to staff. Mr. Allen, I'm sure you can give us a better clarification.
Mr. Mayor, that does create a little bit of a challenge for us because then we'd have to involve collection agencies to go after them. And you know, the difficulty for, and I've met with Mr. Smith about this and we had a long conversation about it, but some of the landlords do get caught in these situations because the Residential Tenancy Act won't allow them to act quickly enough. So then this tenant is absorbing power and abusing it and leaving, like Mr. Smith told me, so you drive by and the lights are on. I'm sure the snow is melting off the roofs. There's nothing going on. So now, and he can't disconnect the power because the Residential Tenancy Act won't allow for that to happen. So we recognize that as a bit of a challenge for us as an organization. And I think one of the things we've got to do is figure out some solutions as we go along. And his situation is precipitated that discussion with us, and we're looking into it right now.
Councillor Hammond. Did that answer your question?
Pardon?
Did that answer your question?
Not quite.
Do you have a follow-up?
Do I have to carry this further into a law court to justify the payment? This is what I'm concerned about. I should not have to go to that expense. He signed a city application taking responsibility for the electricity. Then the city and him should have the problem, not me and him.
Again, to our CEO, Mr. Allen.
Mr. Manzel, that right now the promissory note is that he is going to pay the landlord. The power is in the landlord's name. So the power therefore belongs to the landlord. The tenant has agreed that they will pay it on your behalf. The discrepancy there, how you collect that, is entirely up to yourself, whether you go to the court system or however you choose to do that. The mechanism that the city employs right now is that the power is tied to the property.
I understand that, but he also signed a piece of paper with the city that he would be responsible, not me.
Mr. Shepherd, can you answer that for me, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the responsibility with the electrical bill does stay with the landlord. Tenants are able to sign on, they are able to obtain information about the account and able to make payments, and they receive bills. The ultimate responsibility still stays with the landlord. And the bill is actually in the name of the landowner.
So the legal name is in the landlord's name.
Yes, the tenant just receives a copy of the bill.
Councillor Thompson, Councillor Hammond first.
It would also be that if the city were to take responsibility for collecting delinquent debts from tenants, then it would also be the city's responsibility to vet out the tenancy process, which would eliminate some of your, if the city was gonna interview potential tenants, they would have to get involved with that screening process, because there's some tenants that the city would absolutely say no to, that the landlords have agreed to rent to. So you're wanting the city to take responsibility for a delinquent tenant, yet the city has no responsibility as such as allowing that tenant into that landlord's premise in the first place.
No, you're absolutely wrong there, because if the person that is renting comes over and signs a piece of paper with the truth about being paid, he's going to pay the bills, okay? It takes it off of me. He did not sign a thing saying he was going to pay me and that I have to pay the city. He agreed to pay the city. He came over here, signed the contract, that he would pay the city for the money.
But you're asking the city to take responsibility for a tenant that they didn't lease a building to.
They did take the city did take responsibility when he signed the piece of paper.
But the hydro was in the landlord's name.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Some years ago, when the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act came into effect, a landlord was not able to come into City Hall and ask to know what the account was for their tenants. And so a decision was made at that time to, and with the concurrence of the landlord, and I'm not sure if the landlord signs the applications now, but I think they did at one time. So as you have a rental property and your tenant, you want them to be responsible for the utilities. And I believe that both the tenant and the landlord signed the application. So you would have signed an application for your tenant as well, to say that, yes, you authorized the bills to go to him or whatever, her. And that would enable you at any time, because the account was in the landlord's name, to come into City Hall and to ask and make inquiries about whether or not the utilities for that premise had been paid and kept up to date. And I believe you also get a copy of the bill.
Yeah.
So that you would be able to see, and you know, what the status of the account was. Now the municipal act or the local charter or the community charter provides that unpaid utilities are transferred to taxes in arrears. And so that is what happens. And you know, it's unfortunate for landlords when they get caught into a situation with a tenant that's not responsible and hasn't paid their bill. But that is an issue between the landlord and the tenant. The city is only providing a service to the tenant with the authorization of the landlord. And so it's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate for you, Bob, that you know, you find yourself in this situation, but the city can only do what the city can do, and we cannot become involved in the collection of that account when there are other options available to us at no cost to the taxpayer and the electrical utilities. So that's kind of an explanation, I think, of what transpires and why.
Why would the city even accept his signature as to be the person that's responsible for it?
But is that individual a co-signer is he a co-signer on that bill, or is he the actual
No,
person?
it's a registered thing, they have it here somewhere, that says that he is responsible for the electricity.
But you
period.
signed it as well, right?
He signed it, everybody signed, the city signed it, it's all there, you know.
Legality
Yeah.
of the business, Mr. Smith, the utility is tied to the building, which is in your name.
I don't care if it's tied to the ocean, the point is that it's.
Legality wise, that's what
The
counts.
point is that he has taken that responsibility, you know, to pay it. And at the very least, you should have done after 2 months of non-payment, you guys should have cut the electricity off. I can't turn it off. And I argued with him,
We cannot turn the electricity off without your permission.
Yeah, right. He even accepted the fact that he would take the money owing and put it onto his own personal property. And nothing
We
happened.
will, with all due respect, we will look into this for you and we'll
You're
refer
gonna
it
look
on.
into it. Well, please do that, because I can't
And we will
afford
get
the
back to you.
$10,000 that he's built up against me.
This is over how long?
Pardon?
Over how long? Time frame? How long?
For a year and a half he had it.
You've let this go for a year and a half?
He kept saying he was gonna do this, he was gonna do that. He come to the city and said he was gonna do things, and he didn't do anything.
Well, with all due respect, Mr. Smith,
I know,
you have
but
to use
I'm-
due diligence.
No, my uncle told me I couldn't pack my gun when I was 15.
We will look into this and get back to you on it. The gentleman,
Well, a handshake used to be a law, not anymore.
no, you're definitely right there.
So can I make a suggestion of this? If the city would put out, make it very clear to landlords or anyone that's signing that this is the situation and that a recommendation to ask for at least 2 months of utility as a deposit, and put that recommendation, and nobody on the form, and nobody could come in and make these complaints afterwards. It would be well understood. And then the landlord would be responsible for the due diligence, much more than saying, well, I just want to get the rent, but here's the problem. Because really, I think it is the landlord's case to look at that, as Councillor Hammett was saying. The city would have to be looking into their what's the word, credit and say, we can't, I'm not gonna let this person be here. The landlord's going to do that. And so I suggest that, it is suggested they get at least 2 months of, what's the word, of deposit, and that the tenant would sign saying, if I'm 2 months late, I will give my notice, or worse to that effect, so that the Tenancy Act would be already dealt with, and they could be turfed out.
But with all due respect, I'm not referring to Mr. Smith's case. There are landlords out there that continuously rent out to the tenants for the sake of getting the rent money and keep hoping that one day they're gonna come clean, and it doesn't happen, so. Yeah. Councillor Hammond.
Unfortunately, a lot of, many of the landlords now are looking, because of the situation, at unfortunately having to do, especially in commercial tenancies, take and in hydro, I've talked to tenants, landlords that own both commercial and residential properties, and are starting now and have been taking hydro deposits in advance until they feel comfortable with that tenant. This situation materialized. Mr. Smith isn't the first landlord that got stiffed by this particular tenant. He had moved from another location and done the same thing to the previous landlord, sorry, and now he's in another location. So the city can't take responsibility for landlords renting to delinquent tenants and not checking for references.
Having said that, on the same token, if we start getting responsible for these things, then the next thing, landlords will be coming in and saying, well, the tenant destroyed my property and we pay taxes for that. It goes on and on. Where does it stop? Where does it start? Where does it end?
Excuses don't work.
This is true. The gentleman in the back.
So just for clarity, the suggestion that the city could go to court to reclaim this stuff, I know that whenever the city does anything, it's not cheap. What would be the minimum cost for the city to go to court over anything to reclaim a cost? Like, I'm just curious, what is the lowest possible number here?
Mr. Mayor, that's depending on the extent of the situation. I mean, the staff time alone to do some of this, to research an issue, to gather all the files, I can't even begin to estimate that. I don't think that would be fair for me to provide a number.
I guess I'm trying to achieve this idea. The answer would be, is it going to cost the city more than $1,000 to go after a $1,000 bill?
Well, it could, but Mr. Mayor, the reason that we tie it to taxes is because it's a simple process for the city. We don't have to chase our tail. What happens is the owners have the responsibility. If they do not pay their utilities as set out and that are tied to the taxes, then on the last September or the last Monday in September, when delinquent taxes are paid, the property goes up for sale. It sounds cold and callous, but the city has to have a mechanism that we don't have to chase 4,000 customers around for this, because in order for us to achieve that business, it would be near impossible. And we don't have that type of mechanism because we are dealing with water, sewer, garbage, roads, ditches, parks, and mosquitoes, and the thing goes on and on. So I'm just saying that's why it was dealt
swamps.
Big swamps. So.
Councillor Butler.
Soon you're gonna be chasing them for their water bills too.
I'm sorry, what?
They already have water bills, because they have meters.
Residential landlords are gonna have to be chasing their tenants for their water bills too. They've left a hose running all weekend while they're away.
Yeah, whatever.
My suggestion would be to go forward to a landlords association or other provincial government entities that can take care of this. If you all band together, then you might have a stronger teeth to take care of your tenants.
Well, you going to donate part of the money to the lawyer or what?
You know, I don't think you need a lawyer for that.
Well, I personally, I think it was your responsibility to go after him when he didn't pay it, because he signed the paper stating that he was going to pay. And after 2 or 3 months that he didn't, it shouldn't be my responsibility, it should be yours, because you're the one that's supposed to be collecting.
Not me, I don't have that kind of money.
Pardon?
Not myself personally, you're looking at me.
Yeah.
Well, just our apologies for your situation. Yeah. Unfortunately, at this point, we will look into it, like we will get back to you. We'll check our references and we'll check what documentation there's in effect, and we will address it for you.
Is that a threat or a promise?
Yes.
Give you a little bit of both.
You want to say that again? Your section hard to hear.
Are there any other questions? Because we have a motion on the table to adjourn.
Okay.
All in favor? So carried.